Have you ever felt that your soul is quietly moving, even while your body remains still, as if something within you is being born and fading at the same time, and you cannot explain why? That strange ache when you realize you no longer belong to who you were yesterday, yet you are not fully the person you are becoming. This is the quiet tension Hermann Hesse called the paradox of becoming. It is the invisible battle that every human being carries within, between the light that wants to rise and the shadow that refuses to disappear. We spend our lives running from our fractures. But what if those very cracks are a doorway to wholeness? Hesse once wrote, "The bird fights its way out of the egg. The egg is the world. Who would be born must destroy a world. To become yourself, you must be willing to break the shell that once kept you safe." This is not a story about perfection nor success. It is a story about awakening, about the courage to face your own chaos, to embrace your contradictions, and to find peace not by escaping the storm, but by becoming the wind itself. There is a kind of silence that does not come from the absence of sound, but from the quieting of the mind. It is the stillness that exists before a single thought has taken shape, before the world of names, fears, and ambitions begins to move. Most people never find this silence. They live surrounded by the constant noise of knowledge, ideas, and explanations. They fill every empty space with something, a plan, a goal, a word, terrified of what might emerge if they stopped. Hermann Hesse understood this fear. He wrote of it not as an enemy, but as a signpost. The modern mind, he observed, has become so loud that it has forgotten the ancient art of listening, not to others, but to itself. And in that forgetting, we lose the most sacred connection we have, the quiet dialogue between consciousness and being. He asked the question that echoes through all his work: who am I? It is not a question that seeks an answer. It is a key that opens the first door within. Hesse saw this question as the beginning of all awakening, the moment when the soul begins to turn inward, toward the place where thought has not yet begun. Imagine a night with no movement. The air is still. Somewhere far away, a small candle flickers, not to light a room, but to remind you that light exists. That is the landscape Hesse paints in this first chapter, the inner night before dawn. He invites the reader not to think, but to sense, to feel the weight of stillness, to recognize that silence is not emptiness, but depth. He once wrote, "Within us is everything, outside of us, nothing." It is a simple sentence, but it carries the essence of his philosophy. In a world obsessed with accumulation, of possessions, of titles, of opinions, Hesse offers a reversal. The world outside has no meaning until we meet it from within. What we call truth, love, beauty, or peace cannot be found in things, but only reflected through the mirror of an attentive soul. In this silence before thought, the human being is reborn as a listener, not a listener to words or music, but to existence itself, the rustle of the wind, the rhythm of breathing, the pulse of life that continues without command. These become the language of being. It is the same language that poets, monks, and wanderers have always known, a language without noise, without explanation, where even the smallest pause can reveal eternity. Modern life trains us to speak, to prove, to react. But Hesse reminds us that before the word, there is awareness, and awareness needs quiet to grow. To sit in silence is not to escape the world, but to allow the world to return to its natural rhythm. When thought stops pressing forward, when the mind stops naming everything it sees, what remains is not nothing. It is what Hesse called the self, the presence that simply is. It is easy to mistake silence for loneliness. The modern person, isolated in a world of screens and schedules, fears the absence of sound as if it were death. But in truth, silence is where life breathes. It is the soil from which all thought, all emotion, all creation arises. Hesse saw this clearly. The artist, the seeker, the human being must pass through silence before they can understand what it means to live. He did not glorify suffering or emptiness. He only suggested that peace cannot be found by chasing it. It must be allowed to appear, like the first light that slips across a sleeping horizon. Before the mind begins, he whispers through his prose, "There is something purer than mind, and if we are still enough, we can feel it, the gentle hum of being alive without needing to explain why." In this silence, the question, "Who am I?" begins to dissolve. The need to define, to categorize, to control, all of it softens. What takes its place is not confusion, but clarity. The realization that the self is not a fixed point, but a flowing current, always changing, always becoming. The silence before thought is not the end of thinking. It is the beginning of understanding. When Hesse speaks of listening to oneself, he does not mean introspection filled with judgment or analysis. He means the listening that happens when you stop trying, when thoughts drift like leaves across a quiet pond, and you simply watch them move, not clinging, not rejecting. In that gentle watching, something deeper begins to stir. A still voice, softer than sound, begins to speak. And though it says nothing in words, it says everything that needs to be known. Perhaps that is why he ends this meditation with the invitation, "Let your thoughts drift. What remains is who you are." It is both a comfort and a challenge to let go of the noise, to stop identifying with every thought that passes, and to realize that what remains, the silent awareness beneath it all, is the truest version of you. So tonight, if you find yourself restless, surrounded by the hum of your own mind, remember this: silence is not the absence of meaning, it is the space where meaning is born. You do not need to force the answer. You only need to listen. And in that stillness, before the next thought arrives, you might discover what Hesse meant all along, that within you is everything, and outside of you, nothing. When silence deepens and the noise of thought begins to fade, something gentle begins to stir beneath the stillness, a quiet awareness, fragile yet alive. It is not the end of the journey into silence, but the beginning of something far more intimate, the birth of the self, after one has dared to face the emptiness within. There comes a moment when the soul begins to open its eyes for the first time. Hermann Hesse once wrote, "The true profession of a man is to find his way to himself." It sounds simple, almost obvious, yet this, more than any career, duty, or ambition, is the hardest path a person can walk. For to find your way to yourself is not to discover something already waiting, complete and shining. It is to watch yourself being born, slowly, painfully, through confusion, longing, and the breaking of every illusion you once held sacred. Hesse often described this process not as an act of intellect, but as an act of becoming. The self is not a structure built by thought, but a living organism, changing with each breath, each choice, each wound that teaches us something real. He saw identity as fluid, a river running through the landscapes of experience. Each moment adds something, and each loss takes something away. Yet the river remains the same in essence, even as its waters never stop moving. He compared the self to a newborn child within the soul, small, uncertain, yet full of infinite potential. Like every newborn, it does not speak or understand the world around it. It simply exists, open and pure, waiting to learn. In this image, Hesse captures the tenderness of awakening, the feeling that we are constantly meeting ourselves for the very first time. It is not a comfortable experience. Growth never is. The birth of the self often feels like being torn apart. The old layers of who we thought we were begin to peel away. We outgrow people, places, beliefs. We shed the habits that once defined us. And in that shedding, we are often left raw, disoriented, almost grieving the person we used to be. Yet beneath that grief lies something sacred, the first breath of the new self, fragile but free. Every transformation carries its own pain. Hesse did not deny this. He understood that the soul is shaped not only by joy, but also by the moments when life feels too heavy to bear. He saw suffering not as punishment, but as the pressure that cracks open the seed of awareness. Without struggle, there can be no birth. The self that has never known darkness will never truly understand light. In Demian, one of his most personal works, Hesse wrote about the moment when a young man begins to sense another world growing inside him, invisible, yet undeniable. The outer world continues as before, but within, something shifts. That hidden world begins to call, and life can never again return to what it was. The character's pain, confusion, and isolation are not signs of failure. They are the labor pains of awakening. This is what Hesse meant when he said, "The bird fights its way out of the egg. The egg is the world. Who would be born must destroy a world. The old self, the one built from expectations, rules, and fears, must crack for the real self to breathe. It is not an act of destruction, but of liberation. The egg that once protected you eventually becomes a prison. To stay within it would mean never truly living. Growth, then, is not about perfection, but a permission. The permission to evolve, to change, to contradict yourself without shame. You are not meant to remain one version of yourself forever. Hesse reminds us that identity is not a sculpture to be finished, but a song still being composed. It shifts with every verse, every silence between notes, every heartbeat that reminds you, you are still becoming. The process is not dramatic. It often happens quietly, in the most ordinary moments. When you forgive someone you once hated, when you let go of a dream that no longer fits, when you finally stop pretending to be who others need you to be. These small acts of honesty are the true milestones of inner growth. No one else may notice them, but your soul does. There is a kind of grace in realizing that you are not who you were yesterday. The mind might resist, clinging to the comfort of old definitions, but the deeper self knows. Change is not a loss. It is the nature of being alive. To become is to flow. To flow is to live. So when life pulls you into change, do not fight it. Do not mourn the person you once were. That version of you carried you as far as it could. Now, it steps aside so something new can take its place. Let it go with kindness. Thank it for its lessons. Then breathe and begin again. You are not who you were yesterday, and that is grace. In this single sentence, Hesse gives us permission to stop chasing the illusion of permanence. He tells us the transformation is not a flaw in the human story, but its very essence. The self is not found. It is born again and again, each time we dare to live honestly. So tonight, if you find yourself lost or uncertain of who you are becoming, remember this: the confusion is not a mistake. It is the sound of your soul being born. Let it happen. Let it unfold in its own quiet rhythm. And as your thoughts begin to drift, you may feel the same gentle stirring Hesse once described, the soft awakening of the self, rising from the silence, learning how to see, how to breathe, how to simply be. As the newborn self begins to breathe, a quiet light awakens within, soft, curious, and still unsure of what it truly is. Yet with every new light comes a shadow. Every soul that begins to see must also learn to face what has long remained unseen. This is where Hermann Hesse gently leads us next, into the mirror. He understood that no one can walk the path toward themselves without passing through this dark corridor. To be born is to bring not only clarity, but also contrast. We do not simply discover beauty, we uncover everything that beauty has tried to hide. Growth does not come from escaping darkness, but from learning to stand within it without fear. Hesse did not call it the shadow in the way modern psychology might. He called it the hidden half. It is the unspoken, unpolished part of our being, the one we often deny, repress, or cover with smiles and achievements. But sooner or later, when silence deepens and masks fall away, the hidden half begins to whisper. And if we are brave enough to listen, we begin to see that it was never our enemy at all. Imagine standing before a mirror at night. The room is dim, your reflection barely visible. At first, you see only the outline of your face, familiar and safe. But as your eyes adjust, details begin to emerge, not all of them pleasant. Behind your eyes, a question lingers. Is this really me? The longer you look, the less certain you become, because the mirror you face now does not reflect your image. It reflects your soul. Hesse believed that every person carries such a mirror inside. It does not show what the world sees, but what the heart conceals. To look into it is to confront the forgotten emotions, unhealed wounds, and contradictions that make us human. Most of us turn away. We fear what we might find: the jealousy, the weakness, the selfishness, the rage. But Hesse invites us to stay, to keep looking, to witness without judgment. He wrote, "You are only afraid if you are not in harmony with yourself." Fear, in his eyes, is not proof of danger, but of division. It is the trembling of a soul that has not yet learned to embrace all its parts. When you are in harmony, even darkness becomes a teacher. It stops chasing you and begins to speak to you. In many of his works, from Demian to Steppenwolf, Hesse explores this sacred encounter with the self's hidden side. His characters are never perfect. They are torn between purity and desire, reason and passion, spirit and flesh. Each of them carries within the same paradox, the longing for light and the pull of shadow. Hesse's compassion lies in his refusal to condemn either. He sees the human being as a whole instrument. The music of the soul only exists because of both light and shade. To reject the darkness is to silence half the song. That is why he wrote not with judgment, but with tenderness. He knew that what we fear most in ourselves is often what holds the greatest potential for growth. The anger we repress may hide courage. The envy we despise may reveal unfulfilled longing. Even guilt can become a doorway to understanding, if we allow it to soften rather than harden us. In his universe, transformation always begins in honesty. To stand before your own mirror and admit, "This too is me," is not weakness, it is awakening. The light of awareness does not erase the shadow, it integrates it. Harmony for Hesse was not perfection, but peace between opposites. He believed that a soul in balance is not one that has conquered fear, but one that can sit beside it calmly and say, "I know you." This gentle acceptance marks a turning point. The person who once ran from their flaws begins to walk with them instead. The inner critic turns into a companion. The pain that once divided you begins to dissolve. You start to understand that the mirror never judged you. It simply reflected your becoming. In one of his most luminous insights, Hesse wrote that our task is not to fight the darkness, but to listen to it. That line could have come from a dream, whispered by the hidden half itself. "Do not be afraid of me. I am what makes your light real." There is a profound stillness in realizing that even the shadow longs for harmony. Every dark impulse is simply light misunderstood, love distorted by fear, passion wounded by shame. The parts of us we call dark are only waiting to be understood, to be seen without the weight of judgment. So when fear arises, when you feel that quiet tension between what you want to be and what you truly are, remember Hesse's words. You are only afraid if you are not in harmony with yourself. Fear is not failure. It is a compass. It points you toward the places within that are still waiting for love. Eventually, as the mind softens and the mirror clears, the reflection changes. You no longer see the shadow as something separate. You see it as part of the same light, the contrast that gives shape to your soul. The war between opposites ends not because one side wins, but because both sides finally recognize they were never enemies. And in that recognition, a deep peace arrives, quiet, unassuming, complete. The darkness does not vanish. It simply rests. It has fulfilled its purpose by teaching you how to see. Even the darkness seeks to understand itself. Let that thought linger. Let it echo softly within you. Because perhaps what you call darkness is not an absence of light, but the beginning of a deeper kind of seeing. The kind that happens only when the eyes of the soul finally open. After facing the mirror and learning to sit beside the shadow, a softer kind of clarity begins to flow through the mind. It is not peace in the way most people imagine it, not silence without movement, but a quiet recognition that within each of us, two forces are always alive. They move side by side, shaping the current of who we are. Hermann Hesse saw this clearly and expressed it in one of his simplest, most profound lines. Each man's life represents a road toward himself. To walk toward oneself is not a straight path. It is a river that divides in two. One stream follows the mind, structured, disciplined, searching for form and reason. The other follows the heart, wild, instinctive, flowing toward beauty, desire, and chaos. These are not enemies. They are the two halves of human nature, forever moving parallel, never merging, yet destined to meet in the same ocean. Hesse gave these rivers names through the lives of two characters, Narcissus and Goldmund. Narcissus, the thinker, sought truth through reflection, order, and spiritual discipline. Goldmund, the wanderer, sought truth through touch, art, love, and impermanence. One lived within the monastery of thought, the other within the freedom of the world. And yet, beneath their differences, both searched for the same thing, the way back to the self. Most people, Hesse believed, spend their lives trying to choose between these two waters. We are told we must be one or the other, rational or passionate, logical or emotional, grounded or free. But Hesse's wisdom lies in refusing that choice. He understood that the fullness of being comes not from choosing a river, but from learning to listen to both. The mind and the heart are not opposites. They are two languages of the same soul. The mind teaches us to build, to discern, to name. The heart teaches us to feel, to surrender, to become. When one dominates the other, life grows dry. Too much intellect and we lose wonder. Too much instinct and we lose direction. Harmony arises when both currents are allowed to speak. When we understand that reason without love is empty, and love without understanding is blind. Hesse's world is never about perfection. It is about balance. The tender art of walking between worlds without belonging fully to either. Narcissus and Goldmund, though different in every way, share an invisible bond. Each completes the other's silence. Each holds the half that the other has lost. When they meet, there is no victory, no conversion, only recognition. In that recognition lies a truth that feels almost sacred. There is no single way to live rightly. The disciplined life and the impulsive life are both attempts at the same journey, the road toward oneself. Hesse reminds us that we do not become whole by erasing our contradictions, but by learning to live with them. Imagine again the two rivers. One is clear and narrow, cutting through stone. It knows where it is going, but it flows slowly. The other is wide, unpredictable, rushing through open fields, changing shape with every bend. Both rivers exist within you. Both carry your history, your dreams, your fears. And though they never truly meet, they both reach the same ocean. The place where individuality dissolves into the rhythm of life itself. When we begin to listen to these inner rivers, we start to understand the gentle paradox of human nature. You can be calm and fierce, wise and naive, peaceful and restless, all at once. You can seek stillness while still burning with desire for experience. You can love deeply while also needing solitude. These opposites are not mistakes. They are the essence of being alive. Hesse's insight is not a call to suppress one side, but to witness both with compassion. When the rational part of you feels rigid and controlling, let the wild current of Goldmund soften it. When the instinctive part of you feels lost and untethered, let the clear waters of Narcissus guide it home. Life is not meant to be still water. It is meant to move, to shift, to find balance through motion. He writes not as a preacher, but as a fellow traveler, someone who has known both the silence of thought and the noise of the heart. His words are gentle reminders that peace is not found by mastering yourself, but by meeting yourself fully. The rivers within you do not need to merge to belong to each other. They only need to flow in the same direction, toward the sea of understanding. In that sea, separation disappears. The thinker finds beauty in imperfection. The dreamer finds wisdom in restraint. They do not trade identities, but learn to coexist. That is what Hesse meant when he wrote that life is a road toward oneself. The journey is not about choosing who you are, but remembering that you are already both. Perhaps this is why his stories feel so timeless. They speak to every listener who has ever felt torn between the life of duty and the life of freedom, between the need to control and the need to let go. They remind us that contradiction is not confusion, it is creation. You are not broken because you feel divided. You are only beginning to understand the depth of your own waters. And as Hesse concludes, they never meet, yet they know they are one water. Let those words sink in like a ripple across a quiet stream. You do not have to force the mind and the heart to become one. You only need to remember that they already belong to the same source. Beneath every thought, beneath every feeling, the same current moves, patient, eternal, and whole. Tonight, as you listen, imagine those two rivers flowing gently within you. One calm, one wild, both carrying you home. Do not try to choose. Simply breathe and let them meet in stillness. After walking along the banks of the two rivers, the quiet one of reason and the wild one of instinct, something deeper begins to rise within. Beneath the calm flow, there is a hidden current, stronger, darker, and far more primal. It is the part of us that refuses to be tamed, the force that pulls against comfort and obedience. Hermann Hesse called it the wildness of the human soul, the wolf that lives inside every man. He wrote, "The bird fights its way out of the egg. The egg is the world. Who would be born must destroy a world." These words are not about destruction for its own sake. They are about the necessity of breaking what confines us. The egg is the fragile shell of everything we have outgrown: our habits, our fears, our safe illusions. To live without ever breaking it is to remain unborn, to breathe without truly living. But to break it, to let the first crack appear, is to invite pain, chaos, and freedom all at once. Inside every person lies this quiet battle between two instincts, one that clings to safety and one that longs to tear it apart. We fear change because it threatens our sense of control. Yet every genuine transformation begins with surrendering that control. The wolf within does not howl out of anger. It howls because it feels the walls closing in. It wants space, air, life beyond what is known. Hesse understood this duality intimately. In Steppenwolf, he explored the torment of a man divided between his human self, polite, rational, obedient, and his wild, instinctive nature, untamed and dangerous. The story was not an apology for chaos, but an acknowledgement that repression breeds despair. When the soul is denied its freedom too long, it turns against itself. In each of us lives a quiet creature that hungers for authenticity. It is not violent by nature, but it becomes destructive when silenced. The civilized part of us wants peace, predictability, structure. The wolf wants truth, even if truth burns. Hesse saw this conflict not as something to solve, but as something to understand. To live fully is to stand between these two voices and let them speak. There comes a point in every life when the old self begins to crumble. It may happen after loss, failure, love, or simply through the slow erosion of time. You wake up one morning and realize that the person you have been pretending to be no longer fits. The routines, the beliefs, the masks, they start to feel too small. It is in that moment that the wolf begins to stir. Change rarely feels noble when it happens. It feels messy, uncertain, even cruel. You start to question everything you built, everything you thought you wanted. It feels like betrayal of family, of society, of your former self. But as Hesse reminds us, who would be born must destroy a world. The destruction is not an act of hate, but of necessity. You cannot carry the whole of the old world into the new one. Something must fall away for something new to breathe. He believed that the soul is not meant to stay comfortable. Comfort is the slow death of becoming. To remain inside the egg, unbroken, untouched, is to live in safety without growth. The wolf within us is the reminder that peace without truth is a lie. Sometimes we need the howl, the fire, the breaking to find what is real. And yet, Hesse's wisdom was never reckless. He did not romanticize pain. He revealed its purpose. The suffering that comes with change is not punishment. It is the labor of rebirth. To outgrow your former self is to bleed a little. It is to face your contradictions and not run from them. The wolf is not there to destroy you. It is there to break open the false world you've built around yourself. Think of it this way. Life keeps offering you the same walls until you are ready to break them. Every fear, every frustration, every longing is a message from within, a whisper saying, "It's time." The wolf is not the enemy. It is the midwife of transformation. Hesse believed that a true measure of courage is not found in battlefields or victories, but in the quiet decision to confront one's own boundaries. To destroy the egg means to take responsibility for one's evolution. It means admitting that the life that once served you no longer does. It is not betrayal. It is growth. The world often teaches us to resist this breaking, to hold on, to stay the same, to be consistent. But consistency is overrated when it comes at the cost of authenticity. Growth will always demand contradiction. It will always ask you to let go of who you were so that you can meet who you are becoming. In this sense, the wolf is sacred. It is the symbol of wild truth, of instinct unfiltered by fear. It reminds us that we belong not only to society, but to the deeper rhythms of nature, where everything that lives must die to be reborn. When Hesse speaks of the man who breaks, he speaks of someone who allows life to transform him, even when it hurts. To break is not to fail. To break is to open. The man who breaks is the one who begins. There is grace in that breaking. There is beauty in a moment when everything falls apart and something wordless, something fierce, begins to rise. It is the moment when the wolf inside finally stops fighting and starts guiding, when instinct and spirit learn to walk side by side. So tonight, if you feel the restlessness in your chest, the quiet urge to leave behind what no longer feels alive, do not silence it. Listen. Beneath the fear, you will hear the heartbeat of the wolf, not as a call to destroy, but as a call to begin again. And as you breathe, let Hesse's words echo softly within you. The egg is the world, and you are the bird. The shell is not your home, it is your first obstacle. Let it crack. Let her light in. Let the wolf lead you beyond the walls you have outgrown, into the wild, uncharted space where becoming truly begins. After the shell has broken and the wolf has been heard, there comes a quieter moment, the stillness after the storm. You realize that the world you destroyed was never the enemy. It was simply the container that could no longer hold your growing soul. Yet even now, within this new freedom, another truth begins to surface. To be born is not to be finished. Every rebirth brings its own division. Every awakening introduces a new conflict to understand. Hermann Hesse wrote, "No one can be fully themselves until they are willing to be divided within." It sounds paradoxical, yet it captures one of the most profound realities of being human. Wholeness does not come from perfection, it comes from tension, from the gentle struggle between the parts of you that do not yet understand one another. After the breaking, you begin to notice that your mind and heart still pull in opposite directions. One wants to stay safe, the other wants to run free. One wants silence, the other longs to sing. This inner conflict can feel like chaos, but Hesse saw it as the essential pulse of life. Without contradiction, there is no movement. Without movement, there is no becoming. To live fully, he believed we must learn to breathe with both lungs, the light and the dark, the fear and the courage, the order and the wildness. It is not about erasing one side to glorify the other. It is about listening to both until they learn to speak the same language. The purpose of conflict is not victory. It is integration. In Steppenwolf, Hesse portrayed this inner division vividly through the life of a man who sees himself split into two beings: the cultured, disciplined self and the instinctive, animal self. The man spends much of his life trying to destroy one half for the sake of the other, only to discover that the pain he feels comes not from their difference, but from his refusal to let them coexist. The tragedy is not in having two natures, but in believing that one must die for the other to live. Hesse invites us to imagine the soul as a vast landscape, where storms are not disruptions, but transitions. When the winds of contradiction rise, they are not there to destroy the world, but to move it forward. He reminds us that the storm does not end, it becomes the wind. The conflict that once tore you apart becomes the energy that carries you toward understanding. It is a comforting thought, isn't it? That the very turmoil you fear might be the bridge to your next peace. Life is not asking you to eliminate your inner opposites. It is asking you to dance with them. The moment you stop fighting the dualities within you, they stop being enemies and begin to harmonize, like two notes that form one chord. Most people spend their lives chasing simplicity, a world without contradiction, a self without confusion. But simplicity is not peace. It is numbness. To feel deeply is to be divided. To love is to open yourself to loss. To create is to face imperfection. Even serenity, when genuine, carries traces of sorrow because it knows how fragile beauty can be. Hesse's wisdom lies in showing that the path to harmony runs straight through the heart of tension. You cannot escape conflict by denying it. You transcend it by including it. The soul grows not by avoiding storms, but by allowing them to change its shape. When you finally stop demanding that life be one thing, it reveals itself as everything at once. Fierce, tender, cruel, and kind. This acceptance is not resignation, it is liberation. You begin to see that the self is not a single voice, but a choir. Some voices whisper of reason, others of instinct, others of love, fear, memory. None of them are wrong. They are simply incomplete on their own. Together, they form the music of your humanity. In the quiet moments of reflection, when you feel torn between choices, remember that both sides are speaking truth, just in different tones. The part of you that craves safety is trying to protect your past. The part of you that seeks change is trying to protect your future. Both serve the same master, life itself. When you learn to listen without judgment, you discover that there was never a war, only a conversation waiting to happen. This is what Hesse means by becoming whole through conflict. Wholeness is not an absence of division. It is the ability to hold opposites without breaking, to stand in the middle of contradiction and still breathe, to feel pain and gratitude in the same heartbeat, to let sorrow and joy occupy the same space within you, and to realize that they are not fighting, but balancing. Perhaps this is why Hesse's writing feels so timeless. He doesn't offer escape. He offers reconciliation. The gentle art of living in a world that will always be both beautiful and unbearable. His philosophy is not about controlling life, but surrendering to its rhythm, trusting that every storm carries you closer to yourself. Imagine, for a moment, that your inner world is a vast sky. The clouds of doubt gather, the winds of change rise, and the lightning of fear flashes across your thoughts. You might wish for the storm to stop, but what if the storm is simply the sky remembering its power to move? When you stop resisting, you realize that the storm and the air are not separate. That movement is not the opposite of peace. It is peace in motion. The storm does not end. It becomes the wind. Let those words settle into you like a slow breath. They are an invitation to stop seeing conflict as failure and to start seeing it as transformation. Every disagreement within yourself, every contradiction, every doubt is the sound of your soul expanding its range. So tonight, as you rest, do not try to silence the parts of you that disagree. Let them speak softly to one another in the quiet of your mind. Let them find their rhythm. And as you breathe, remember, harmony is not when the storm stops. Harmony is when you realize you were the wind all along. After the storm becomes the wind, life settles again, not into peace, but into rhythm. The inner world finds a fragile balance between opposites, and for a while, it feels like harmony. Yet soon, something subtler begins to stir. You look around and realize that outside the quiet realm of the soul lies another storm, not of nature, but of appearances. It is the storm of society, the endless play in which every person must perform. Hermann Hesse saw this stage with painful clarity, and he began this chapter with the simple, haunting truth. They all play roles, and yet none are themselves. We are born into a world that loves performances. From the moment we learn to speak, we are handed scripts, how to behave, what to want, whom to please. Slowly, without even noticing, we begin to wear the faces others expect of us. We become the polite version, the competent version, the strong version. And somewhere beneath those masks, the real self starts to fade. Not dead, just sleeping, waiting for the noise to stop. Hesse's metaphor of the theater is not meant to accuse, but to awaken. He understood that society runs on illusion, that people act because it is safer than being real. A role offers comfort. It gives you a place, a purpose, an identity to hold on to when the world feels uncertain. But that comfort comes with a price. When you live too long as the character, you forget the actor. When you live too long for others, you forget what it feels like to be alive for yourself. Every day, people step onto invisible stages. The workplace becomes one, the dinner table another, even the mirror before bed. We perform the role of the one who has it together, the one who is happy, the one who is kind. We perform love, ambition, faith, confidence, and perhaps, at first, these roles protect us. They help us navigate the chaos of life. But eventually, something inside begins to ache. We start to feel the weight of pretending. Hesse understood that exhaustion. He wrote not to condemn it, but to comfort those trapped within it. The fatigue we feel is not weakness. It is the soul's natural rebellion against falseness. Every sigh that escapes after a long day of being fine is the truth trying to breathe through the mask. He invites us to look at our lives the way one might look at a play after the lights go down. To ask gently, who am I when no one is watching? What remains when the curtain falls? These are not questions of despair, but of liberation. The goal is not to abandon all roles, but to remember the one beneath them in Demian, Steppenwolf, and Siddhartha. Hesse's characters struggle with this exact realization. They are not villains or saints, but wanderers, people tired of pretending to be who they are supposed to be. They begin to crave something deeper, something that cannot be performed, authenticity. Hesse saw authenticity not as perfection, but as honesty, the courage to exist without disguise, even when that truth is inconvenient or misunderstood. He knew that modern society, in its search for order and approval, pushes people away from their inner truth. It teaches us that being real is dangerous, that vulnerability is weakness, that silence must be filled Yet the more we act, the more we forget how to feel. The tragedy is not that we lie to others, but that we start to believe the lie ourselves. Still, Hesse's message is not hopeless. He reminds us that every role, even the false ones, carries the seed of truth. The mother who pretends to be strong may discover real strength within her. The man who performs kindness may one day feel it genuinely. Pretending is not the end. It is the beginning of awareness. What matters is not to lose yourself in the act, but to remember that it is an act. At some point, though, the soul grows restless. It begins to whisper through fatigue, through boredom, through the quiet question that keeps you awake at night. Is this really me? That moment of discomfort is sacred. It is the same impulse that drives Hesse's characters to wander, to leave behind comfort in search of meaning, to drop the script, even if only for a breath, and listen. He believed that true peace is found not in being perfect, but in being real, flawed, tender, alive. The masks may help us survive, but they cannot help us rest. And so, Hesse gently reminds us, even masks need to sleep. It is a beautiful image. The mask finally laid down at the end of the day. Beneath it, the face looks tired but free. The smile may fade, but what replaces it is softer, more honest. For the first time, the breath deepens, the eyes relax, and the self, the real one, begins to emerge again. Perhaps this is why nighttime feels sacred in Hesse's world. It is not only the time for rest, but for truth. When the world grows quiet and no one is watching, the soul can finally remove its costumes. It does not need applause. It does not need approval. It only needs stillness. That tender silence in which we are no longer performing. Hesse didn't ask us to reject the world or abandon our responsibilities. He simply asked us to remember that life is not meant to be a stage forever. Roles can serve us, but they are not meant to define us. You can play your part with grace, but when the lights dim, you must know how to return to yourself. So tonight, as you listen, imagine placing your mask gently beside you. You do not have to throw it away. Just let it rest. Feel the air touch your uncovered face, the weight of pretense lifting. Let the world fade until there is nothing left to perform, only the quiet truth of being. And as sleep begins to draw near, remember Hesse's words, a whisper of mercy for the weary soul. Even masks need to sleep. When the mask is finally set down and the curtain falls on the endless theater of roles, silence enters again, not the deep, liberating silence of the soul, but a quieter, heavier one. You begin to notice how easy it is to drift into comfort, how tempting it is to stay in the warmth of ordinary life. After all, peace can sometimes feel like sleep. Hermann Hesse understood this subtle danger more deeply than most. He called it the gentle suffocation of the bourgeois soul, what he once described as a comfortable hell, neither alive nor dead. It is an image that lingers. Imagine warm water filling a bath. The temperature is pleasant, familiar, soothing. You sink in, you breathe, you relax. It feels safe. But after a while, you realize you cannot stay there forever. The warmth dulls the senses. It slows the heart. It takes away the sharpness of life itself. You are not in pain, but you are not alive either. That, Hesse says, is the danger of spiritual comfort. A life so safe that it quietly smothers the soul. In his stories, this comfortable hell is not filled with suffering or evil, but with routine, the quiet repetition of days that look exactly the same. People wake, they work, they talk about small things, they go to sleep. Everything functions, nothing changes. There is food, warmth, companionship. Yet beneath the surface, something essential is missing, the fire that gives life meaning. Hesse's criticism of the bourgeois life was not about wealth or social class. It was about spiritual numbness, the kind of existence where the heart forgets how to dream. When a person stops questioning, stops longing, stops risking, they begin to drift into a kind of sleep while still awake. They become, as he put it, neither alive nor dead. This state is seductive because it feels peaceful. There is no great suffering, no crisis, no deep conflict. But there is also no transformation. The soul, which thrives on movement, begins to stagnate, and like water left too long in a bowl, it grows still, warm and lifeless. Hesse believed that the human spirit was not made for endless comfort. He wrote that struggle, doubt, and longing are not signs of failure, but signs of being truly alive. When we numb ourselves against discomfort, we also numb ourselves against wonder. The same walls that keep out pain also keep out joy. In Siddhartha, he describes how the young seeker, after leaving his ascetic path, falls into the easy rhythm of ordinary life. The business, the pleasures, the comfort. For a time, it feels complete. But slowly, imperceptibly, his inner light dims. He stops listening to the river. He stops searching for truth. He becomes successful, respected, admired, and utterly lost. It is only when he feels the quiet ache of emptiness that he understands. Peace without depth is just another form of sleep. And so, he must wake again. This, Hesse suggests, is the tragedy of the comfortable life. It asks nothing of you. It lets you float on the surface of your own existence, never forcing you to dive deep. You may never drown, but you will never touch the bottom either. Never feel the strength of swimming. Never see what lies beneath. He invites us to look honestly at our own lives. How often do we confuse contentment with aliveness? How often do we call it peace when it is really fear? The fear of breaking the shell again, of facing the unknown, of losing control? The warm water feels safe precisely because it demands nothing new from us. But over time, the soul begins to whisper that safety is not the same as freedom. To be alive, Hesse believed, is to remain in motion, to allow your inner world to breathe, to question, to create, to love beyond what feels convenient. The death of the spirit does not come from suffering. It comes from the absence of desire. When we stop longing for something greater, even quietly, we begin to fade. And yet, his message is not to reject comfort altogether. Rest has its place. The problem is not warmth, but the refusal to leave it. The water is meant to soothe, not to imprison. There is beauty in stillness when it comes from awareness, not apathy. He reminds us that awakening does not always come in the form of thunder. Sometimes it arrives as a whisper, a small discontent, a question you can no longer ignore, a faint restlessness beneath the surface of a calm life. That is the soul's way of saying, this is not enough. When that moment comes, Hesse encourages us not to drown it in distractions. Don't fill the silence with noise or the emptiness with shallow pleasures. Sit with it. Let the restlessness speak. It is not there to torment you. It is there to wake you. For Hesse, this awakening is an act of courage. To leave the warm water is to expose yourself to the cold air of uncertainty, but also to the clarity that only freshness brings. You remember what it feels like to breathe deeply, to feel the pulse of life again. The spirit, once numbed, begins to stretch and expand. He closes this reflection with a line that feels almost like a lullaby, a soft invitation to return to the essence of being. Tonight, no roles, no masks, just breath. It is both a reminder and a promise. Beneath all our performances, beyond all our comforts, what remains is the simple rhythm of breathing. Proof that we are still here, still capable of feeling, still capable of change. So tonight, as you listen, ask yourself quietly, have you mistaken warmth for life? Have you been floating too long in water that feels safe but keeps you from swimming? If so, you do not need to escape or burn the world behind you. You only need to move, even slightly, toward aliveness again. Because in Hesse's world, life does not ask for perfection. It only asks for honesty. To live is to risk. To breathe is to choose the unknown over the illusion of control. And when you do, when you step out of the warm water and feel the first chill of truth against your skin, you might realize what Hesse always knew, that the soul's real home is not in comfort, but in awakening. When the warmth of comfort begins to fade and the masks have all been laid aside, something subtle stirs in the quiet space that remains. It is not chaos, nor fear, but a question, soft, persistent, and impossible to ignore. If all this was not real, then what is? If the life I lived was just a role, and the comfort I sought only a sleep, then what does it mean to awaken? Hermann Hesse often began his reflections from that exact threshold, the thin veil between dreaming and waking, illusion and awareness. He wrote, "Every dream ends when a dreamer opens their eyes." Yet, he never stopped there. For Hesse, the act of waking up was not as simple as leaving one dream behind. It was discovering that reality itself may be another dream, a deeper, truer one. In the previous reflection, we saw how easy it is for the human spirit to sink into the warm water of habit, safe, familiar, and slowly numbing. But even that sleep is not the end. There comes a moment when something deep within whispers that it is time to rise, not just from the world's illusions, but from the illusions inside ourselves. That is where this chapter begins. At the edge of awakening, where life and a dream blur into one continuous experience. For Hesse, awakening is not a single event. It is a rhythm, a breathing between layers of consciousness. Each time we believe we have opened our eyes, another veil appears. We peel it away, only to find another beneath it. It is not a failure. It is the nature of being human. To live, he believed, is to awaken again and again, endlessly, each time to a broader understanding of who we are. He questioned the idea that waking up means leaving behind imagination or illusion. To him, those things were not enemies of truth, but gateways into it. In his world, Dreams are not lies. They are the language of the soul, the way our deeper self tries to speak to the surface. Sometimes, to see clearly, we must dream deeper, to wander through the inner landscapes until we recognize them as mirrors of our own mind. In Siddhartha, Hesse shows that even enlightenment can become another dream if one clings to it. The moment we think we have arrived, we begin to fall asleep again. The ego loves to call itself awakened. The spirit, however, knows that awakening has no finish line. It is not an achievement, but a movement, a gentle, endless unfolding. He asks the question that lingers softly in the silence. What if real awakening is not about escaping the dream, but about becoming conscious within it? What if enlightenment means not leaving the world, but seeing through it, realizing that every sound, every face, every breath is part of a larger living dream? To wake up inside the dream is to see everything, even pain, even longing, as part of a single sacred process of becoming. It is to stop dividing life into real and unreal, spiritual and ordinary, the bird, the street, the laughter of a stranger, the silence between words. All of it belongs to the same mysterious whole. There is a certain tenderness in this way of seeing. Hesse's awakening is not violent or dramatic. It does not demand that we abandon the world, but that we notice it more deeply. To awaken, in his sense, is to open the heart's eyes, to see through the appearances of life without turning away from them. Imagine walking through a dream in which you are aware that you are dreaming. The people you meet still matter. The beauty of the sky still moves you. The ache of loss still touches you. But now, you see it all with compassion instead of confusion. That, Hesse suggests, is the beginning of true awakening. He believed that the greatest illusion is the belief in separation, the idea that you are here and life is out there. When the dreamer finally realizes that they are not separate from the dream, everything changes. The world no longer feels like something to conquer or escape. It becomes something to understand, to breathe with, to love. And yet, this realization does not make life easier. In fact, it can make it more delicate, more honest. Once you see the dream for what it is, you cannot go back to sleep completely. You cannot unknow your own awareness. Every interaction becomes meaningful. Every silence feels alive. There is no escape, only participation. Hesse's question: is awakening truly opening one's eyes or dreaming deeper? Is not meant to confuse, but to soothe. It invites us to stop chasing final answers. Perhaps awakening is not an end at all, but a way of being, a willingness to stay curious, to keep walking between the visible and the invisible. To live in this way is to become both the dream and the dreamer, both the actor and the witness. You watch your own life unfold, knowing that every joy and every sorrow is part of a larger pattern. You no longer need to control it. You only need to be present enough to see it clearly. When he writes, perhaps awakening is simply dreaming deeper, Hesse gives us permission to rest, to stop treating awareness as a destination and start treating it as a gentle returning to ourselves, to the world, to the infinite flow that connects them. He reminds us that life itself may be the most exquisite dream of all, one in which The soul learns, loves, and loses, only to rediscover itself again in new forms. Waking up, then, is not about rejecting the dream, but honoring it. It is to know that even in confusion, beauty exists. Even in sleep, the heart remembers where home is. So tonight, as you listen, do not try to escape your thoughts or silence your mind. Instead, let them drift like clouds across a quiet sky. Let them shape and reshape themselves, knowing that each one carries a small truth from the deeper dream. And as you breathe, remember, perhaps the goal is not to wake up from the dream, but to wake up within it. Because maybe, just maybe, awakening is not the end of dreaming, but the moment when the dream finally recognizes itself. After wandering through the dream and learning to awaken within it, the soul begins to crave stillness. Not the kind that escapes life, but the kind that listens to it. There comes a quiet recognition that every movement, every breath, every loss and beginning is part of one vast current flowing through everything. It is here that Hermann Hesse, through Siddhartha, speaks of the river, that eternal mirror of existence, endlessly moving yet forever still. He writes, "The river is everywhere at once." This is not merely a poetic image, it is a truth whispered by all things. The river in Hesse's world is not a body of water, it is the embodiment of life itself. It flows through mountains and villages, through joy and sorrow, through youth and old age, and yet it is always one. The same water that rushes past your feet today is the same that has flowed for centuries before you and will continue long after you are gone. To see the river is to see time, fluid, circular, without beginning or end. In this vision, time is not a line that moves forward. It is a spiral, an eternal turning of moments that are always present. Birth, death, love, loss, none of these are destinations. They are ripples in the same stream. As Hesse wrote, "The river is everywhere at once, at the source and at the mouth, at the waterfall, at a ferry, at the current, in the ocean and in the mountains." To truly see this, Hesse tells us, one must stop naming things. Because to name is to separate. When we call something a river, a life, or a self, we draw lines where none exist. We turn the living flow into a concept, a label, a story that we mistake for reality. But the river is not something you can define. It is something you can only feel. Its truth is not in words, but in the silent rhythm of its movement. There is a moment in Siddhartha when the protagonist sits beside the river and finally hears it speak, not in language, but in understanding. Every sound, every shimmer becomes a teacher. The river does not try to convince or persuade. It simply is. In its being, it shows him that all opposites, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, birth and death, are not contradictions, but parts of one continuous song. To watch the river is to see your own reflection changing and unchanging all at once. The water that passes by never returns, yet the river itself never leaves. In that paradox, there is peace, because it teaches that change does not destroy identity. It is identity. You are not the same person you were a year ago, and yet something in you remains constant. That constant is not your name or your memories, but the awareness that flows through them. In that awareness, Hesse finds freedom. He shows us that suffering often comes from resistance, from trying to hold the river still, to make life conform to our expectations. But the river does not stop for anyone. It moves, it bends, it breaks against rocks, and still it continues. When you try to hold on, you drown. When you let go, you float. And so, the path to peace is not in controlling the flow, but in surrendering to it. Hesse does not mean resignation, but understanding. The river accepts everything: rain, mud, debris, sunlight, and transforms it all into motion. Likewise, when we allow our experiences to pass through us without clinging or judgment, we too remain pure, like clear water after the storm. This is what Hesse means by spiritual maturity, the ability to see life without dividing it into good or bad, success or failure. Everything belongs. The river carries it all. As Siddhartha realizes, the river taught him how to listen with a still heart, with a waiting, open soul, without passion, without desire, without judgment. There is something deeply healing about this kind of listening. It softens the sharp edges of our striving. It quiets the restless mind that always wants to arrive somewhere. When we stop naming every moment, when we stop saying, "This is joy, this is loss, this is me," we begin to rest in the simple presence of life itself. We begin to see that all moments, like waves, rise and fall, yet never leave the ocean. And perhaps this is why the river is sacred in Hesse's writing. It represents not escape, but return, a coming home to what has always been flowing within us. For a long time, we think the river is outside, something to find, to reach, to understand. But in the end, we realize that the river was never apart from us. It is our breath, our heartbeat, our thoughts, our becoming. To sit beside the river is to sit beside your own soul, to see how it changes without losing itself. You may watch the ripples of memory, the current of longing, the eddies of regret, but beneath it all, there is something still, silent, eternal. That stillness is what Hesse calls understanding. As the night deepens, imagine that river flowing gently through you. Every thought is a leaf drifting by, every emotion a reflection on its surface. You do not need to hold or name them. Just watch, just breathe. Because, as Hesse reminds us, the river doesn't move, we do. It is a reminder that what changes is not life itself, but our point of view. The world does not hurry. It only appears to, because we keep running. When we stop chasing, the current reveals what has always been true. Life was never going anywhere. It has always been right here, quietly flowing beneath your feet. So tonight, let yourself rest on its banks. Listen to its gentle murmur. You do not need to understand it, only to trust it. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the current. And as you drift towards sleep, remember, the river is not a place you go to find peace. It is what you already are. After sitting beside the river long enough, something begins to shift inside you. The endless motion of the water, the rise and fall of its sound. It starts to whisper a truth that feels both comforting and disorienting. Everything is connected, yes, but not in the way the mind imagines. The current moves as one, yet each drop has its own rhythm, its own path, its own quiet purpose. And in this realization lies one of Hermann Hesse's most profound insights. That true harmony does not mean merging everything into sameness, but learning to rest within difference. He once wrote, "Knowledge can be communicated, but not wisdom." It is a sentence that seems simple at first, but within it lies the heart of his philosophy. Knowledge seeks to categorize and define. It wants boundaries, clarity, order. But wisdom flows like the river. It moves in silence. It cannot be owned, explained, or passed from one person to another. It must be lived, breathed, experienced. In Siddhartha, Hesse shows us that the pursuit of unity, the desire to become one with everything, can itself become another form of ego. The mind, impatient and restless, wants completion. It wants the feeling of having arrived somewhere final, where no questions remain. But the river laughs softly at such an idea. It reminds us that life's beauty does not come from merging all things into one indistinguishable whole, but from allowing each part to sing its note in the great harmony of existence. Unity, as we imagine it, often comes from fear. Fear of separation, fear of loneliness, fear of imperfection. We want the comfort of sameness because difference demands presence, attention, humility. But Hesse invites us to see that the illusion of unity, this longing to dissolve into something grand and whole, can sometimes distance us from the sacred diversity of life. True peace does not arise from the disappearance of contrasts, but from the quiet acceptance of them. In the same way that the river flows without conflict between its ripples and depths, life too contains its variations, light and shadow, calm and current, sound and silence. The more we try to erase those differences, the further we drift from wisdom. Because wisdom is not sameness, it is balance. Imagine sitting by that river again at dusk. The surface glows gold from the sun, while the depths remain cool and dark. The colors do not fight, they coexist. The light does not demand that the darkness vanish, and the darkness does not resent the light. Both belong. Both make the river whole. This is what Hesse teaches us through his gentle contradictions, that we do not find peace by blending everything into uniform stillness, but by becoming quiet enough to hold opposites without needing them to resolve. The mind seeks conclusion, but the soul seeks spaciousness, and in that space, everything has its place. There is a line in Siddhartha where the teacher says, "The river has taught me to listen. You will learn too." What the river teaches is not perfection, but stillness. The art of listening is the art of letting things be. To listen is to stop trying to fix or define, and to let the world speak in its own language. Hesse contrasts this with the limitations of knowledge, the way words and concepts can divide what is naturally whole. He writes, "Knowledge can be communicated, but not wisdom. Knowledge separates the teacher from the student, the speaker from the listener, the self from the world. Wisdom, however, erases those boundaries. It cannot be spoken because it is already within you. It is the recognition that the same silence that fills the river also fills your breath. This is why he says, it's not about becoming one, it's about becoming quiet. The quieter you become, the less you need the illusion of oneness, because in silence, you already feel the truth. that everything moves together without needing to be the same. The tree does not need to become the mountain to belong to the landscape. The wave does not need to dissolve into the sea to be part of the ocean. Belonging, Hesse reminds us, is not about losing form. It is about losing resistance. We live in a world obsessed with unification, of ideas, of identities, of beliefs. We want certainty, agreement, peace that feels neat and permanent. But that kind of peace often silences what is alive. The real world, the world Hesse loved, is full of tension and contradiction, and within that tension lies its beauty. He believed that wisdom grows in the spaces where opposites meet. It is born from listening, not from concluding. The more we allow the world to be complex, the closer we come to understanding it. Because understanding is not about control, it is about compassion. In your own life, you may have felt this illusion of unity, the wish to make everything clear, consistent, unchanging. Perhaps you've tried to fix relationships, or organize your thoughts, or perfect your beliefs, thinking peace would come once everything aligns. But Hesse would tell you gently, peace is already here. It does not appear when the world stops moving. It appears when you stop struggling against its movement. To become quiet is not to retreat from life, but to stop arguing with it, to let the river flow through you as it is, messy, shifting, alive. Quiet is not emptiness. It is fullness without noise. It is the silence that holds everything together. And so, Hesse's illusion of unity is not a warning against love or connection, but an invitation to deeper intimacy, one that does not need to erase difference in order to belong. The deepest harmony comes from listening, from letting each note of life play freely without trying to control the melody. As the night unfolds, perhaps you can feel the same truth within yourself. You do not need to dissolve into perfection to be whole. You are already part of the great song, even with your contradictions. Let your thoughts soften. Let your heart rest. Feel the quiet pulse beneath everything, the same rhythm that beats in the river, in the wind, in your breath. There is no need to become one. You are already part of it all. And in that stillness, in that listening, you will find what Hesse found. That peace is not the end of difference, but the space that holds it. Silence begins to take root once we stop trying to merge with life and start learning to move with it. There is a moment, soft, unannounced, when the need to control fades, and in its place arrives a simple realization. Life was never meant to be mastered, only understood through participation. Hermann Hesse expressed this beautifully in Siddhartha when he wrote, "When one learns to listen to the river, one learns everything. It is not the river's movement that teaches us, but the act of listening itself. Listening without wanting to possess. Observing without demanding meaning. Flowing without asking where the current will take us. In that still observation, wisdom quietly appears, not as a revelation, but as recognition. The river has always known where to go. So have you." Hesse believed that true peace comes not from separating yourself from the world, but from learning to breathe with it. Each current, each change, each small disruption becomes part of a larger pattern that needs no correction. The heart finds harmony when it stops resisting the rhythm that carries it. To listen to life as one listens to the river is to realize that you are not standing on its shore. You are already within it, moving, shaping, and being shaped by its flow. For so long, humans have been taught to fight the current. We are told to set goals, to build dams around our emotions, to carve paths that force the water into direction. But as Hesse shows, the water doesn't need us to tell it where to go. The river does not fight gravity. It moves with it. And maybe that is what wisdom truly means. Not the absence of struggle, but the grace of movement within it. Think of the moments in your life when you try to hold on too tightly to a person, to a dream, to an image of who you thought you were supposed to be. What happened? The harder you tried to control it, the faster it slipped away. That is the lesson of the river. Life flows through open hands, not clenched fists. Listening, in Hesse's language, is an act of surrender, not a passive giving up, but an active opening. It is choosing to let experience wash through you without trying to trap it in meaning. It is realizing that understanding does not come from analysis, but from presence. To listen to the river is to be present enough to notice that everything speaks. The sound of water over stones, the rustle of leaves, even the silence between breaths. All of it carries the same message. You belong. As the current moves, you begin to sense what Hesse meant by oneness, not a grand cosmic merger, but a quiet intimacy with life itself. You are no longer an observer trying to define what you see. You are part of the seeing. The river outside becomes the river within. The water that flows past your feet is the same that flows in your veins. And so, the separation that once felt so heavy begins to fade. There is no longer me and the world. There is only motion, gentle, endless, complete. Hesse captures this unity in the way he describes Siddhartha's awakening. When the man stops searching for enlightenment and simply sits beside the river, listening, he finally understands that enlightenment was never lost. It had been flowing through him all along. To learn to flow, then, is to unlearn the obsession with direction. You do not need to know where the river ends. You do not need to force its pace. The destination has never mattered. What matters is the movement, the dance of water against stone, the soft surrender to gravity, the acceptance of change as the only constant. This is not resignation, it is revelation. It is understanding that life's wisdom lies not in resistance, but in rhythm. As Hesse reminds us through every page of his writing, to flow is to trust. To trust the current is to trust yourself, because the current has always been a reflection of what you carry inside. Many people believe peace comes from stability, from finding still waters where nothing moves. But Hesse's river tells a different story. The stillness we seek is not outside the movement, but within it. The water is never truly still, yet the river is always at peace. So too with the human soul, beneath the surface of our chaos. There is a deeper calm that never changes. We do not create it, we remember it. As your awareness deepens, you begin to feel that the river does not flow through the world. The world flows through the river. Everything, the sky, the wind, the light, even your thoughts, drifts along the same current. You are not apart from it. You are its echo, its continuation, its dream. Or as Hesse might have said, you were never separate. You were always the whole ocean dreaming itself. Let that idea rest in you for a moment. The ocean doesn't reject its waves. Even when they rise and crash, it welcomes them as part of its eternal breathing. So too, can you welcome each feeling, each thought, each fleeting experience as part of the vast, dreaming ocean that is your being? Imagine sitting by that river again. The water moves gently under the moonlight, silver and endless. You no longer try to name it, to understand it, to own it. You just breathe with it. Slow, easy, rhythmic. And in that stillness, you realize that life does not need you to be perfect. It only asks that you flow. Each breath becomes a ripple. Each thought becomes a wave returning home. You are not a current pushing forward, not a bank trying to hold it back. You are the river itself, flowing, resting, becoming. Hesse's message, carried softly in his prose, is that listening is the highest form of wisdom. To listen deeply, to the world, to others, to your own heart, is to align yourself with the movement of existence. You stop standing against life. You begin to move with it. And maybe that is all the river ever wanted to teach. That peace does not come from stillness, but from flow. That love does not come from control, but from trust. That wisdom does not come from words, but from silence. So as this chapter closes, let your mind soften. Let your breath match the quiet rhythm of water finding its way home. There is nothing to fix, nothing to prove, nothing to chase. Because the truth has been whispering all along, through every sound, every wave, every stillness between them. You were never separate. You were always the whole ocean dreaming itself. There comes a moment in every journey when silence gives birth to expression. Once the river of life has taught us to listen and to flow, a quiet longing begins to rise, not to escape the world, but to translate it. The soul, having learned to surrender, now seeks to create. Hermann Hesse believed that this impulse to make, to shape, to give form to the invisible is not vanity, but salvation. He once wrote, "After every war, there must be art. It is a simple truth, yet it carries the weight of centuries. When faith falters, when the gods grow silent, when the noise of the world becomes unbearable, it is art that restores meaning." Art, for Hesse, was not decoration. It was a spiritual necessity, the bridge between despair and understanding. In a world too loud to hear prayers, creation itself becomes prayer. Hesse saw the artist as a priest of the inner life, not bound by dogma, but devoted to translating the human condition into beauty. He understood that art is not born from perfection, but from fracture. Every brushstroke, every word, every note of music is a way of saying, "I am still here. I have felt, I have suffered, I have loved, and through that, I have become." To create is to breathe when words fail, to write, to paint, to compose. These are not acts of control, but of communion. The artist does not command meaning. They uncover it. The canvas, the page, the melody, they become mirrors through which the soul recognizes itself. And in that recognition lies healing. In Demian, Hesse describes the process of creation as a sacred rebellion. The artist, he writes, paints with pieces of his soul. Each creation is a fragment of being, torn gently from within and offered to the world. It is both sacrifice and celebration. The pain of expression is also the joy of liberation, because to release what was trapped inside is to make space for new light. For Hesse, art begins where certainty ends. It emerges from silence, the same silence that the river taught us to trust. But here, silence does not remain still. It begins to sing. Art is the soul's way of turning stillness into sound. It is how the invisible becomes visible, how the personal becomes universal. Through art, suffering becomes melody, confusion becomes form, and solitude becomes connection. Consider what happens after great turmoil. Not only wars between nations, but wars within ourselves. The mind battles fear, doubt, loss. The heart fractures. And yet, from that breaking, something astonishing can arise. The painter reaches for color, the poet for words, the musician for sound, not because they have conquered pain, but because they have learned to speak it softly. Hesse believed that creation is how the human spirit repairs what life has broken. In Narcissus and Goldmund, he shows two archetypes, the monk and the artist, the contemplative and the creator. One seeks truth in stillness, the other seeks it in expression. But both, in their own ways, reach for the divine. The artist's devotion, Hesse suggests, is no less sacred than prayer. For what is a painting but an altar of light? What is a story but a confession of the soul? To make art is to trust that something within you is worth translating, even if no one understands it. The act itself is enough. Hesse writes, "The true artist does not seek approval. He seeks to give shape to his truth. That truth may be quiet, small, fragile, but it is alive. And in a world so often drowned in imitation, the courage to create something true is the rarest kind of faith." There is also tenderness in Hesse's vision of the artist. He never portrays creation as arrogance, but as vulnerability. To create is to expose yourself, to let others see the raw, unpolished parts of your soul. It is an act of trust that beauty can emerge even from imperfection. And perhaps that is why art feels sacred, because it reminds us that nothing needs to be flawless to be divine. This is what Hesse meant by saying that art is a form of resistance. Not political resistance, though it can be, but existential resistance against despair, against numbness, against the slow fading of meaning. In times when humanity forgets itself, art becomes its memory. It says, we are still capable of feeling. We are still capable of wonder. Think of the moment you stand before a painting that silences you, or hear a piece of music that seems to stop time. That stillness, that soft recognition that something eternal is speaking through form, is what Hesse devoted his life to describing. It is not knowledge, it is not explanation, it is communion. He reminds us that creation is not limited to artists. Every act done with awareness, every gesture of kindness, every word spoken in honesty, every moment of presence can be art. To live creatively is to see life as a canvas and your choices as brushstrokes. You may not always paint beauty, but you can always paint truth. In this way, Hesse transforms art into a spiritual practice. It is not about achievement, but awakening. Each act of creation is a step toward self-understanding. Each mistake is part of the pattern. The artist's journey mirrors life itself, chaotic, uncertain, yet guided by something deeper than reason. And so, even in a world that feels divided, art remains the quiet thread that connects us. It reminds us that we are not alone in our longing. Someone, somewhere, has felt what you feel and turned it into form. Through that form, you are seen, understood, and momentarily made whole. Let this thought settle as softly as a brush against canvas. The divine never disappeared. It simply changed its language. The prayers of old became the paintings, the stories, the songs that carry us through the night. Hesse knew this well, and so he offered the artist's task not as a burden, but as a blessing. As he wrote, "The artist paints with pieces of his soul. That is why every true work of art feels alive. It breathes because someone dared to give it life. It speaks because someone listened deeply enough to translate silence. And it endures because through art, the soul refuses to die." So tonight, as you listen to this story, let your heart rest in that truth. Creation is not separate from you. You are already creating every thought, every breath, every dream. And perhaps in this quiet moment, you too are becoming art. Every act of creation, Hesse reminds us, begins as a prayer, a soft defiance against meaninglessness. Yet, like all things human, even creation carries its shadow. Once the soul learns to shape beauty from silence, a quieter temptation arises. The desire to perfect it, to understand it completely. Out of this longing for mastery, for purity of intellect, Hesse imagined Castalia, the radiant but sterile world at the center of the glass bead game. It is a place where meaning reigns supreme, yet life itself has vanished. He wrote, "Meaning saves us, but meaning isolates us." In those few words lies one of his deepest warnings. The pursuit of knowledge, however noble, can turn into a cage. The mind, once a tool for insight, can become a fortress. Inside its walls, everything is orderly, logical, pure. But the air grows thin. The heart forgets how to breathe. Castalia, in Hesse's imagination, is a sanctuary for scholars and thinkers who have dedicated their lives to the perfection of understanding. They play the glass bead game, an intricate synthesis of music, mathematics, philosophy, and art, a kind of intellectual symphony designed to unify all knowledge. It is humanity's dream of total comprehension, the longing to touch eternity through reason. And yet, within this perfection, there is a quiet sorrow. The inhabitants of Castalia live for ideas but not for life. They worship beauty as abstraction, not experience. The river of the world still flows outside their walls, full of chaos, laughter, pain, and imperfection, but they do not hear it anymore. They have replaced the warmth of living with the clarity of thought, and in doing so, they have traded the pulse of existence for the illusion of purity. Hesse's vision is not a rejection of intellect, but a plea for balance. He understood the mind's brilliance, its capacity to build worlds, to name the unnameable, to make sense of the stars. But he also knew its danger, the moment when the search for meaning becomes an escape from feeling. The mind shines, the heart sleeps. To live only in thought is to live half awake. Ideas can illuminate the path, but they cannot walk it for us. The glass bead game, for all its beauty, becomes a mirror that reflects only itself. perfect, infinite, but empty. In its endless patterns of logic and symmetry, it loses the pulse of the human spirit. Think of the moments in your own life when understanding became a substitute for presence. You explained your emotions instead of feeling them. You analyzed love instead of surrendering to it. You thought your way through grief instead of allowing it to move through you. In those moments, the mind shone brightly, but the heart slept. That is the tragedy of Castalia. It is the tragedy of every person who has mistaken intellect for wisdom. Knowledge connects ideas. Wisdom connects hearts. One builds systems, the other builds bridges. The men and women of Castalia in their pursuit of ultimate truth. Forget that truth without tenderness becomes lifeless, like a star that burns too cold to give warmth. Hesse's protagonist, Joseph Knecht, begins as a faithful servant of this world. He rises through its ranks, mastering the game, revered for his intellect. But gradually, he begins to feel the weight of the silence around him. The perfection that once inspired him now suffocates him. The more meaning he gathers, the less alive he feels. He starts to sense that beyond the walls of Castalia lies something the game cannot hold. The messy, unmeasured, unpredictable fullness of life. And so begins his awakening. He realizes that meaning, no matter how grand, is only half of existence. The other half, feeling, love, participation, is what gives meaning its soul. Without that, knowledge is sterile. It may save us from ignorance, but it cannot save us from loneliness. Hesse's warning is as relevant now as it was when he wrote it. We live in an age of infinite information, a world that knows almost everything but understands almost nothing. We scroll, we study, we analyze, yet somehow we forget to feel. The noise of knowledge drowns the quiet voice of wisdom, like Castalia. We are connected by data but isolated by intellect. To learn everything, as the glass bead masters dreamed, is to risk forgetting how to live. Meaning, pursued without compassion, becomes another illusion, elegant but hollow. True understanding doesn't come from mastery, it comes from humility. It is found not in the game's perfection, but in the willingness to step outside of it, to touch life again, to be moved by it, to be imperfectly human. Hesse does not condemn Castalia outright. He sees its beauty. The glass bead game is humanity's noblest dream, the longing to weave all things together. But he reminds us that unity of knowledge means nothing without unity of heart. The intellect can trace the constellations, but only love can feel their light. Joseph Knecht's final act, leaving Castalia to rejoin the living world, is Hesse's symbol of redemption. It is not a rejection of thought, but a homecoming to wholeness. To leave the game is to remember that the world's messiness is not a flaw to be corrected, but a song to be heard. Meaning and mystery must coexist. One gives depth to the other. This is the paradox Hesse leaves us with. That wisdom is found not in knowing everything, but in knowing enough to stay humble before the unknown. To think deeply, yet love deeply. To seek truth, yet remain tender. As his words whisper through the stillness, meaning saves us, but meaning isolates us. The mind, for all its brilliance, can only take us so far. Beyond thought lies something softer, older, infinite, the quiet intelligence of the heart. And perhaps that is the true glass bead game, not the one played with symbols and theories, but the one played between souls, the invisible conversation between love and understanding, between silence and creation, between knowing and being. So as this night deepens, let the mind rest from its questions, let the heart wake, let it listen to the river once more. You are not here to solve the game. You are here to play it with grace. Because in the end, the secret that Hesse left behind is as simple as it is profound. The mind shines, but only the heart knows why. Beyond the walls of intellect, once the brilliance of meaning has dimmed and the heart has begun to stir again, something even softer emerges. A quiet awareness. The search for perfection fades, and in its place comes stillness. This is where Hermann Hesse's final vision of art resides, not in creation as performance, but in creation as presence. He reminds us gently, even doing nothing is an art if done with awareness. The artist of Castalia once believed that truth could only be found in mastery, in a careful construction of ideas, in the glass bead game of endless meaning. But the deeper truth, Hesse tells us, lies not in mastery, but in surrender. The truest form of art begins where effort ends. It begins in awareness itself, in simply being awake to existence. To Hesse, the quiet artist is not someone who paints, writes, or composes. It is anyone who lives with open eyes and a listening heart. You do not need a canvas or an audience to create. Every breath, every glance, every moment of honest attention is a brushstroke on the vast canvas of life. Art, in this sense, is not a product. It is a way of being. In his later years, Hesse came to see stillness as the highest expression of creativity. The same way the river flows without striving, the awakened soul moves through life without forcing. It does not chase beauty, it notices it. It does not create in order to prove. It creates in order to understand. In silence, creation becomes effortless, because life itself becomes the artist. Think about how rare true stillness has become. Our world teaches us that movement equals meaning, that productivity defines worth. But Hesse offers a radical gentleness. To rest consciously is to create harmony. Doing nothing, he says, is not emptiness. It is space. It is the quiet in which truth can finally speak. Just as music needs silence to be heard, the soul needs stillness to remember itself. He reminds us that even in the act of non-doing, the universe continues to create through us. The wind shapes the clouds. The river carves the earth. And the breath shapes the rhythm of the body. Awareness is the bridge between these quiet movements and our own being. The artist within does not command these patterns. It listens to them, learns from them, and slowly becomes one with them. In Siddhartha, there is a moment when the protagonist, after years of seeking, stops searching entirely. He sits beside the river, no longer asking questions, no longer seeking answers. He simply listens. And in that silence, he finds the understanding that eluded him all his life. It was never about doing more, but about being more present. To let silence create you, as Hesse writes, is not a poetic metaphor. It is a way of returning home. The mind is always building, constructing meanings, planning futures, replaying the past, but the soul speaks only in the now. When we become quiet enough to hear it, we realize that creation is already happening, constantly, through us and around us. Every moment becomes a work of art, fleeting, fragile, and beautiful in its impermanence. There is a humility in this kind of creation. It asks nothing of the world. It seeks no recognition. It does not measure itself against others. The quiet artist does not say, "Look at what I've made." They say, "Look at what has passed through me." The self becomes a vessel for something greater. Call it life, call it spirit, call it presence. In that surrender, something miraculous occurs. The line between the creator and the creation disappears. Hesse's invitation is not to withdraw from the world, but to see it differently. He is not asking us to stop acting, but to act with awareness, to bring consciousness to even the smallest gestures. Washing dishes, writing a letter, breathing in the cool night air. All of it can be art if done with mindfulness. Because the essence of art, he reminds us, is attention. What we attend to, we give life to. In Demian, he writes, "The bird fights its way out of the egg. The egg is the world." Earlier in the journey, that struggle was necessary. The fight to break free from illusion, from conformity, from sleep. But now, the bird rests. It no longer fights the world. It learns to glide through it. That is what awareness feels like. Flight without force. The quiet artist within us knows this instinctively. They do not rush. They do not strive. They move through life like the river through its bed, following the natural curve of being. To live this way is not to stop creating, but to allow creation to flow effortlessly through awareness. You might think of this as the final evolution of the artist, from doing to being. The musician who hears silence as part of the song, the painter who knows when to stop adding color, the writer who understands that the story continues long after the last word. The quiet artist is the one who trusts life enough to let it finish the masterpiece. In this stillness, the ego softens. The need to prove dissolves. The desire to control fades into a deeper kind of trust. The same trust that lets the seed rest in the soil. The same trust that lets the tide return to the shore. To live like this is to understand that your very existence is the art. That consciousness itself is the masterpiece unfolding moment by moment. So, as Hesse whispers through the centuries, even doing nothing is an art, if done with awareness. Let that thought settle in you like the last note of a lullaby. You do not need to fill the silence. You only need to listen to it. You do not need to create more. You only need to see what is already being created through you. Tonight, let the world paint you instead. Let stillness be the artist. Let awareness be the brush. Let breath be the color. And as you drift towards sleep, remember, you are not separate from the beauty you seek. As he said so tenderly, tonight, create nothing. Let silence create you. In that soft surrender, in that luminous quiet, the artist within finally rests, and yet, somehow, everything continues to bloom. The silence that follows creation is unlike any other. It is not emptiness, but fullness, a quiet hum beneath all things. Once the artist within has learned to rest, to let awareness create instead of the hand, something begins to reveal itself. The rhythm that holds everything together. It is the rhythm of time, not the one measured by clocks or calendars, but the one that breathes through all life. Hermann Hesse understood that there are two kinds of time. One belongs to the world, mechanical, precise, endlessly ticking forward. The other belongs to the soul, fluid, cyclical, eternal. The first is the time of the clock. The second is the time of the river. The clock divides life into pieces, into schedules and deadlines, into beginnings and endings. It keeps us moving, but also keeps us anxious. It tells us that time is slipping away, that we must hurry, that we are running out of something we cannot see. The river, however, whispers a different truth. It moves too, but it never hurries. Its motion is endless, but its presence is still. In the river's time, nothing is lost. Everything simply transforms. Hesse once wrote that every moment is both birth and death. It is a line that captures this paradox perfectly. Each instant carries within it the entire cycle of existence, something ending, something beginning, both contained within a single breath. The clock sees only one direction, forward. The river sees in circles. He was fascinated by how the human mind measures time, but how the heart experiences it. The mind obeys the clock. The soul listens to the river. We wake, we work, we sleep, believing we are moving through time. But perhaps it is time that moves through us. Perhaps what we call passing moments are really waves returning to the same shore, each carrying a reflection of eternity. The modern world, Hesse might say, lives trapped inside the ticking of the clock. We rush through days as if the future were waiting just beyond reach. We chase minutes, count hours, celebrate years, and yet, beneath all this motion, something still waits untouched. The soul does not know days or decades. It knows only presence. The eternal doesn't unfold across a timeline. It breathes in the now. If you've ever had a moment that felt endless, a sunset that seemed to pause the world, or a silence that held more meaning than 1,000 words, you've touched the river's time. In that space, you are no longer moving forward or backward. You simply are. And that state, Hesse believed, is where true peace begins. In Siddhartha, he describes this realization through the sound of the river. The protagonist hears it say, "The river is everywhere at once, at the source and at the mouth, at the waterfall, at the ferry, at the current, in the ocean and in the mountains." For the river, there is no past or future. All exists together. All flows at once. Time for the awakened soul is like this, infinite, simultaneous, whole. Imagine living this way, not ruled by the clock, but guided by the current. The pressure to be on time dissolves, replaced by an awareness of perfect timing. Life does not hurry because it does not need to. The flower blooms exactly when the sun touches it. The tide returns exactly when the moon calls. The heart beats exactly when it must. Hesse teaches us that the deeper we listen, the more we realize that eternity is not somewhere far away. It is hidden within the ordinary rhythm of now. What if every breath was eternity in disguise? What if the thing we call time is just the soul's way of noticing itself? A gentle pulse reminding us that we are alive. There is something profoundly soothing about this thought. It lifts the weight of urgency. You no longer need to chase moments. You only need to notice them. Each breath becomes a small resurrection, the past fading, the future waiting, and the present unfolding endlessly. Science measures time as motion, the spin of a planet, the vibration of an atom, the decay of matter. Hesse saw time as meaning, the way we experience change and continuity at once. Both are true, but only one brings peace. The clock will always tell you what time it is, but only the river can tell you what time means. He wrote often about this tension between worldly time and inner time. In Steppenwolf, he describes characters lost in the mechanical flow of modern life, haunted by their inability to feel the depth beneath the surface of days. For Hesse, to heal was to slow down, not in the body, but in the mind. To sit quietly long enough to hear the river inside you, even as the world outside keeps ticking. That is why he believed silence is not the absence of time, but its purification. When you stop fighting the clock, stop filling every second, you begin to hear the eternal rhythm beneath it. The same rhythm that moves the river, the wind, the stars. The same rhythm that once moved you before you learned to call it time. To live with this awareness is to live both within and beyond time. You still keep appointments, still see the sun rise and set, but your inner life is no longer bound by the ticking. You begin to notice that eternity is not a future destination, but a dimension of now, always present, always breathing beneath the noise of hours. There is a kind of quiet joy in seeing life this way. You can forgive the past, because it is still happening somewhere in the flow of memory. You can stop fearing the future because it is already unfolding, softly within you. You can rest in the moment because it is infinite. And perhaps that is what Hesse meant by enlightenment, not escaping time, but learning to live inside it fully, with awareness, to feel the seconds passing not as loss, but as music. Each tick of the clock becomes a note, each breath a verse in the song of eternity. So tonight, as you sit in the quiet, listen closely. Beneath the sound of your heartbeat, beneath the rhythm of your breath, there is another pulse, vast, ancient, and calm. It is the same pulse that moves through rivers, through trees, through galaxies. It does not rush, it does not end. You are not separate from it. You never were. You are the clock and the river, the fleeting and the infinite, the moment and the forever. And perhaps that is all the wisdom you need to rest in tonight. Every breath you take is eternity, wearing the mask of time. Time has loosened its grip. Once the ticking of the clock fades and the river's rhythm takes over, something miraculous begins to unfold. The realization that the eternal is not somewhere else, waiting at the end of a long road. It is here, now, quietly pulsing beneath every heartbeat. Hermann Hesse once wrote, "The eternity of man lies in the moment." To truly understand that line is to awaken to the profound truth that the present is not fleeting. It is infinite. The mind has been taught to move through time like a traveler on a narrow path, always looking back or forward. never pausing long enough to see the ground beneath its feet. But Hesse's wisdom turns that journey inside out. Eternity, he reminds us, is not a line stretching endlessly through past and future. It is a depth that opens only in the now. To live fully present, even for a breath, is to touch the timeless. The transition from the clock and the river to this truth feels natural, as though, after listening long enough to the river's flow, you begin to hear the silence between its ripples. That silence is not absence, it is eternity, disguised as stillness. The same current that moves through time also holds it still. The moment, seen clearly, is both motion and rest. A perfect paradox that Hesse explored throughout his life. In Siddhartha, Hesse describes the instant of awakening as a sudden clarity, a dissolving of all boundaries. The protagonist sees the river and understands that all things, all lives, all experiences are happening together. Now, birth, death, joy, grief, none of them are separate events. They are waves in the same ocean, rising and falling, yet never leaving the water. That is the eternal moment, not a fragment of time, but the whole of existence condensed into presence. To live this way is to become quiet enough to listen. Not with the ears, but with the soul. The mind asks, how long does this moment last? But the heart knows it lasts forever, because it never truly ends. The past and future are thoughts, shadows of memory and imagination. The present is the only place life actually happens. Hesse's gift was his ability to make eternity intimate. He did not speak of it as something cosmic or unreachable, but as something you can feel in an instant of awareness. The moment you pause and feel your breath enter and leave. The way light falls across a wall, the sound of leaves moving in the wind. These are not small things. They are doorways into infinity. The eternal moment is what remains when the noise of striving fades. When we stop measuring time by what we achieve and begin to experience it by how deeply we exist within it, Hesse reminds us that peace is not in escaping time, but in dissolving within it. The mind that tries to hold the moment makes it vanish. The heart that listens lets it expand. He wrote that to be truly alive is to stop watching the clock and start hearing the rhythm. The rhythm of what? Of life itself. That subtle pulse that connects you to everything that ever was and will be. The eternal does not announce itself with thunder. It arrives softly, in the quiet spaces between thoughts, in the gentle awareness that nothing is missing. In our modern world, eternity feels impossible. We live surrounded by motion, constantly pulled from one instant to the next. But Hesse's philosophy offers an antidote. To rest in awareness, even for a few breaths, is to step outside of time. The ticking continues, but you are no longer bound to it. You stand still while everything flows around you, and yet, somehow, you move with it too. This moment, right now, has never happened before, and it will never happen again. But it also never truly goes away. It becomes part of everything. The breath you take right now will move through the air, into the trees, into someone else's lungs one day. The thought you release will ripple through the unseen fabric of life. Every instant is an eternity because it holds all other instants within it. That that is what Hesse meant when he said, "The eternity of man lies in the moment." It is not the body that is eternal, nor the mind, but the awareness that observes them both. That awareness, the watcher behind thoughts, has no beginning or end. It was there before the first sunrise and will remain after the last. To glimpse it, even for a second, is to remember who you are beyond time. In Steppenwolf, Hesse's troubled protagonist experiences flashes of this realization. Brief moments where the chaos of life dissolves into a strange clarity, where every sound and color seems to vibrate with the same mysterious energy. These are not hallucinations. They are revelations. They show that beneath the illusions of time and identity, there exists a still point, a place within us that has never been touched by fear or decay. To enter that stillness, you do not need to renounce the world or seek enlightenment. You only need to stop running from the present. The eternal moment is already here, quietly waiting for you to notice. It does not demand effort, it asks for attention. It does not require faith, it offers experience. Close your eyes for a moment. Listen, not to the words, but to the silence underneath them. Feel how time pauses when you become aware of it. The seconds stop counting, the body softens, the breath finds its rhythm. You are no longer in time, you are with time. The past and future melt, not because they are destroyed, but because they were never separate to begin with. This is the heart of Hesse's wisdom. The eternal is not something to reach, but something to remember. It is already flowing within you, just as the river carries every drop back to the sea. You were never apart from it. You only forgot how to feel it. He might say, gently, past and future melt when you truly listen. Listening, in Hesse's philosophy, is not a passive act. It is sacred attention, the kind that turns ordinary life into meditation. It is how we rediscover the soul beneath the noise, the stillness beneath the storm. And so, as this reflection closes, imagine time softening around you. Imagine your thoughts settling like dust in sunlight. There's nowhere to go, nothing to do, no moment better than this one. The eternal is already here, in your breath, in your awareness, in the quiet that holds everything together. Let it be enough. Let it be forever. Because eternity was never waiting for you somewhere in the distance. It has been here all along, breathing softly in the moment you call now. The moment of stillness stretches. The eternal present, that quiet awareness Hesse spoke of, does not stay bound to daylight. It follows us gently into the night. As consciousness begins to fade, something tender happens. The mind lets go, and the illusion of time begins to dissolve. The ticking clock keeps moving, yet for the sleeper, hours vanish into a single breath. Hermann Hesse once wrote, "Time is not real. It is only the shadow of the mind. In sleep, that shadow finally lifts." There is a calm beauty in the idea that rest is a return to timelessness. During waking hours, we divide life into moments, seconds, plans, deadlines. But when the body sinks into sleep, those boundaries fall away. The mind no longer measures. The self no longer narrates. Awareness releases its grip, and we are carried quietly into something larger, a state beyond before and after, beyond counting and control. Hesse understood that sleep is more than recovery. It is a miniature death, a nightly surrender into the infinite. Just as the river merges into the sea, the self dissolves into a greater rhythm, one that continues breathing, even as we forget to notice it. As you sleep, the universe keeps breathing for you. That single image, the cosmos inhaling and exhaling in our place, carries the essence of Hesse's philosophy. The self is not separate from the whole. Even in unconsciousness, we remain connected to everything. This realization follows naturally from the eternal moment. To live fully awake is to touch eternity through presence. But to fall asleep is to rest within that eternity, to stop grasping at it. Awareness in wakefulness is active, luminous. Awareness in sleep is surrendered, trusting. Both lead to the same truth, that existence does not depend on our effort to sustain it. The universe does not stop because we close our eyes. It continues, holding us softly within its endless flow. Think about the way time feels as you drift towards sleep. The minutes before you close your eyes seem long and full of thought, but the moment you cross that invisible threshold, time collapses. You wake, and the night has vanished. To the clock, hours have passed. To your mind, only a single instant. Sleep, then, is not simply a pause. It is a reminder that time itself is only a lens the waking mind creates to make sense of change. When the lens falls away, reality remains pure and unbroken. Hesse's insight reaches deep here. Time, he says, is the shadow of the mind. Shadows cannot exist without light, and so the illusion of time exists only as long as the light of our consciousness projects it. In darkness, there are no shadows. Sleep, then, is a kind of homecoming, not to ignorance, but to unity. In the absence of thought, the self merges with the eternal rhythm that has always been breathing beneath our awareness. There is a paradox at the heart of this. While the waking mind fears losing control, the deeper self yearns for this surrender. We seek eternity in ideas, yet experience it every night in rest. The moment you stop trying to hold the world holds you. The same hands of time that push us forward by day cradle us gently in the dark. Hesse would likely smile at how nature teaches this truth effortlessly. The tide does not worry about where it has been or where it will go. The stars do not hurry to burn brighter before dawn. Even a tree outside your window does not mourn the setting sun. It simply stands, alive, present, waiting for the next breath of light. Sleep aligns us with this natural rhythm. In letting go, we rejoin the quiet intelligence of life itself. He believed that our deepest wisdom comes not from thought, but from stillness, from the wordless awareness that precedes all motion. In sleep, the mind stops naming, comparing, and dividing. The eye that measures the hours disappears, leaving only the essence of being. This is why dreams feel outside of time. They unfold without sequence, merging past, present, and future into one seamless landscape. The dream world, in Hesse's view, is not less real. It is more honest. It shows the fluid nature of consciousness when freed from the prison of the clock. To fall asleep is to practice faith in existence. You lie down, close your eyes, and surrender all control. You trust that breathing will continue, that the heart will keep beating, that the sun will rise again. You trust that life, vast, silent, mysterious, will hold you through the hours you cannot see. It is, in its own quiet way, the purest form of meditation. He might have said that in sleep, we return to the original silence of creation, that same stillness described in the silence before thought. The circle completes itself. From the first questioning of who am I to this final act of release, the journey of becoming finds its rest. We began with awareness, struggling to wake. We end with awareness, learning to rest without fear. This view transforms the simple act of falling asleep into something sacred. It is no longer a daily necessity but a gentle ritual of reunion, the moment when the self returns to the timeless. Each night, the soul rehearses eternity, slipping beyond time's shadow into the clear light of existence. In this sense, every night's sleep is both a small death and a quiet resurrection. Hesse invites us to see that there is nothing to resist. The passing of time, the fading of consciousness, even the stillness of deep sleep, all are part of the same dance. To fight them is to live in fear. To surrender is to remember that the river never stops flowing. You are carried. Even when you do not paddle, you are alive. Even when you forget what life feels like. He wrote often of harmony, not as a balance achieved by force, but as a natural state that emerges when the self aligns with the flow of existence. Sleep, then, is the purest harmony of all. It is the state in which we no longer struggle against time, because we no longer believe in it. The eternal holds us. The mind releases its shadow. So tonight, as you close your eyes, remember that you are not stepping into emptiness. You are stepping back into the infinite field that has always held you. The same rhythm that beats in your heart moves through galaxies. The same breath that fills your lungs stirs the wind outside your window. Let yourself rest within that rhythm. Let time dissolve around you. Let thought fade into the quiet hum of eternity. As Hesse whispered through his timeless prose, as you sleep, the universe keeps breathing for you. And maybe that is the most comforting truth of all, that even in silence, even in stillness, even as you drift beyond awareness, life continues to sing through you. Tonight, you do not need to hold the world. The world is already holding you. Night fades, but the silence remains. The soul that drifted beyond time now returns, slow, soft, reborn from that timeless sleep. Something awakens, the awareness that even in solitude, you were never alone. Every dream you dreamed, every breath you took was part of a larger rhythm, one shared with countless others. Out of that realization, Hermann Hesse leads us gently into the next truth. We discover ourselves not in isolation, but through the reflection of others. He once wrote, "Every man is not only himself, he is also the unique, particular, and only event." Each human being, in Hesse's vision, is both an individual and a universe, a living event unfolding within the grand design of existence. No two souls are the same, yet every soul contains traces of all others. To look into another's eyes, he believed, is to see not a stranger, but a fragment of yourself reflected back. From sleeping within time, we learn that the self dissolves into the rhythm of life, that time, body, and ego fade into one breathing whole. But now, as we awaken into the light of day, we must face another realization. The eye that wakes is not a closed circle. It is an open mirror. constantly shaped by every person it encounters. Hesse understood this paradox with deep compassion. We think we are defined by our thoughts, our actions, our choices. But much of who we are comes from the silent exchanges between souls. A glance, a kindness, a wound. These moments build us. The people we meet are not random visitors. They are mirrors, polishing the surface of our being. Some reflect our beauty, others our flaws. But all reveal something essential. The contours of our hidden self. In Demian, Hesse explored this truth through the mysterious bond between Emil Sinclair and Max Demian, two halves of the same awakening consciousness. Demian is not merely a mentor. He is the mirror through which Sinclair learns to see his own strength and shadow. Each of us, Hesse reminds, will meet such mirrors. People who disturb us, inspire us, even break us. And through them, we begin to recognize the shape of our soul. He might have said that relationships are the universe's way of teaching us to see. Without others, we remain blind to our own depths. The warmth we find in love, the pain we feel in rejection, both are forms of revelation. In connection and conflict alike, the self becomes visible. To Hesse, forgiveness is one of the most profound mirrors of all. When you forgive, you remember. Not in the sense of recalling pain, but in the sense of awakening to shared humanity. Forgiveness is not about erasing the wound, but about recognizing that the one who hurt you and the one who suffered are both expressions of the same life. In that awareness, separation dissolves. The mirror clears. There is something deeply peaceful in that realization. It means that every encounter, even the painful ones, serves a purpose. The friend who abandoned you, the lover who misunderstood you, the stranger who smiled at you once and never again. Each of them is part of your becoming. They hold up pieces of your truth that you could not see alone. In Siddhartha, this lesson is mirrored in the way the protagonist meets and learns from others. The courtesan Kamala, the merchant Kamaswami, the ferryman Vasudeva, each becomes a reflection of a different part of his journey. Desire, ambition, wisdom, and yet it is only through Vasudeva, who listens without judgment, that Siddhartha truly understands the unity of all beings. The ferryman becomes not a teacher, but a mirror, silent, still, reflecting the river that flows through them both. This mirror of others, Hesse suggests, is how we learn compassion, not through moral instruction, but through recognition. The moment you see yourself in another's joy or sorrow, empathy ceases to be a virtue. It becomes a natural response. You cannot hate what you understand to be yourself. You cannot harm what you feel as your own heartbeat. But to live this truth requires courage. It means accepting that the people who challenge us most often reflect the parts of ourselves we've denied. The impatience we see in another's face, the arrogance we judge, the fear we pity, all are mirrors of something we've buried within. To reject them is to reject ourselves. To embrace them is to begin healing. Hesse did not idealize this process. He knew how painful it can be to see oneself reflected in others. In Steppenwolf, Harry Haller looks into many mirrors, literal and symbolic, that show him his fragmented self. He is horrified at first, believing himself divided, monstrous. But as he learns to laugh at his own contradictions, the mirrors stop distorting. They begin to reveal a larger harmony, a self vast enough to contain both saint and sinner, lover and loner. That, perhaps, is the ultimate purpose of the mirror, not to flatter or condemn, but to integrate. Each reflection, kind or cruel, adds another thread to the tapestry of the soul. To see others clearly is to weave yourself more whole. Think of how this unfolds in your own life. The smile of a child softens your heart. A friend's betrayal teaches you boundaries. A stranger's kindness restores your faith. These are not coincidences. They are exchanges of energy, lessons written into the flow of existence. Each person you meet is a wave that touches your shore, reshaping it slightly before moving on. Hesse's world is one where individuality and unity coexist, not as opposites, but as mirrors of the same truth. We are both separate and inseparable. The light shines differently through each window, yet it is the same sun. The soul wears countless faces, but behind them all, one awareness looks out. And perhaps that is what forgiveness truly means. Not forgetting the past, but remembering that we share the same light. To forgive is to let go of the illusion of difference, to see the reflection for what it is, your own soul seen from another angle. As night falls again and the rhythm of breath slows, imagine the faces of everyone you have ever met, fleeting or lasting, gentle or harsh. Each one was a teacher. Each one helped you see. Some taught love, others pain, but all left traces of themselves within you, just as you left traces within them. Let that thought bring peace. You are not an isolated being moving through an empty world. You are a constellation of reflections, a living network of mirrored souls. Every connection, every heartbreak, every act of tenderness was the universe speaking to itself through you. So tonight, as you rest, let the mirrors fade into one. Let judgment fall away. Let only understanding remain. Because, as Hesse once reminded us, every man is not only himself, he is also the unique, particular, and only event. And in seeing that, in forgiving, in remembering, we finally recognize what the mirrors have been showing all along. There was never me and you. There was only us, reflecting eternity in each other's eyes. The mirrors fade, yet the reflections remain, from seeing ourselves in others. We move towards something deeper, the longing to belong, to dissolve the fragile border between I and you. In the quiet aftermath of recognition comes the ache of connection. Hermann Hesse once wrote, "To love means to suffer, and there can be no love otherwise." He did not mean this as a warning, but as a revelation that love is not the end of pain, but a transformation of it. From the mirror of others, we learned that every human being we meet reflects a piece of our own soul. But now, in learning to belong, Hesse invites us to take one step further, to see that love is not just recognition, but surrender. To love someone is to allow their reflection to blur the edges of who we think we are. It is to risk losing the comfort of separation, and in that loss, to find something far greater. Belonging, in Hesse's world, is not conformity. It is not about fitting neatly into the patterns society lays out for us. It is about opening the self wide enough to contain another being, to let their joys and sorrows echo within our own. He reminds us that love, real love, will always hurt, not because it wounds, but because it stretches the soul beyond its old shape. To love means to suffer. The line sounds tragic, but in Hesse's philosophy, it is profoundly hopeful. Suffering, for him, is the fire through which the heart is purified. It burns away illusion, the illusion that we are separate, self-sufficient, unconnected. Love strips us bare, revealing how deeply we depend on the breath of others to feel alive. This idea threads through much of Hesse's writing. In Siddhartha, the protagonist must learn love through loss. He loves Kamala, yet cannot keep her. He loves his son, yet must let him go. Each attachment tears him open, but each tear becomes a doorway to wisdom. Only through the pain of losing what he loves does he finally understand that love itself is not possession. It is participation, a willingness to feel deeply without needing to hold. Hesse understood that the human heart expands only through vulnerability. To love is to open the gates of the self, to let another's world flood into your own. You cannot belong without being changed. You cannot love without risking pain. But that risk, he believed, is the very essence of being alive. Belonging is not built on perfection. It grows in the cracks between us, in the moments we misunderstand each other. Forgive. Try again. It lives in the tremble of uncertainty when we choose to stay. To belong is to say, I will not run from what is fragile. It is a vow made not with certainty, but with tenderness. And yet, belonging extends beyond human love. Hesse saw it as a spiritual movement, a return to unity with all life. The trees, the river, the stars, each breathes with us. Every breath connects you to everything breathing tonight. The truth of belonging, then, is not limited to romance or friendship. It is the realization that to exist is already to be part of everything that exists. Imagine that for a moment, each inhale you take tonight is the same air that once passed through countless lives, the lungs of ancient forests, the wings of birds, the chests of those you will never meet. Love, in its deepest form, is this recognition that nothing truly ends, that every living thing shares the same silent rhythm. In Narcissus and Goldmund, Hesse captured this tension between solitude and connection. Narcissus represents the mind, detached, disciplined, searching for truth through thought. Goldmund represents the heart, restless, sensual, drawn to beauty and touch. Their friendship, though tested by distance and pain, reveals that neither can exist without the other. The thinker needs the lover needs the stillness of the thinker. To belong, Hesse suggests, is to embrace both, to honor our individuality, yet remain open to the infinite network that holds us. Love, for Hesse, is not about completion, but awakening. It teaches us to see beyond the narrow walls of our ego. It humbles us, dismantles our pride, reminds us that we are not the center of the world. We are threads in a living tapestry. Every act of love, no matter how small, binds us to that greater pattern. To belong also means to forgive the distance that remains between souls. No matter how close we come to another, there will always be a space we cannot cross, a mystery that remains untouched. But this, too, is sacred. It is the space that allows reverence to exist. We do not merge entirely. We orbit, we reflect, we breathe together. Belonging, then, is not ownership, it is harmony. There is a quiet peace in accepting that love will never be without suffering. To love fully is to expose the most vulnerable parts of ourselves, the fears, the insecurities, the unhealed wounds. But as Hesse shows us, this exposure is not weakness. It is the beginning of transformation. The heart that never breaks never learns to grow. The soul that never loses never learns to see. Think of the people you have loved, those who stayed and those who left. Each of them changed the shape of your life. Some expanded your world with joy, others did so with pain. But both kinds of love were gifts. Each connection, each heartbreak, was the universe reminding you that to belong is not to be owned or held. It is to be known, even for a moment, and to know. In the stillness of night, this truth becomes easier to feel. The loneliness that sometimes accompanies love is not absence. It is the echo of connection stretching across distance. Somewhere, someone breathes the same air as you. Somewhere, someone feels the same ache of longing. And in that invisible bond, you are not alone. Hesse's gentle wisdom whispers through it all. Belonging is not something we find. It is something we allow. We belong the moment we stop guarding ourselves against the world. The moment we stop pretending that independence means isolation. To belong is not to lose oneself. It is to become more fully human. He would have told us that love is both our greatest suffering and our greatest teacher. It is the mirror in which the divine becomes visible through human eyes. Through love, we learn to forgive, to let go, to see the sacred in the ordinary. Through love, we remember that our lives are intertwined with all others, that our breath, our grief, our joy are part of the same pulse of being. So tonight, as you listen to the rhythm of your own breathing, remember this. It is not just your breath. It is the breath of the world moving through you. It connects you to every heart that beats, every leaf that trembles, every soul that dreams under this same vast sky. Let that connection soothe you. Let it remind you that to suffer for love is to live fully. Let it soften your heart toward the past, toward the people who shaped you, toward yourself. Because every breath connects you to everything breathing tonight. And in that gentle truth lies the peace Hesse spent a lifetime seeking. You already belong. The night grows softer now. The mirrors have shown us who we are, and love has taught us what it means to belong. But Hermann Hesse reminds us that belonging does not end with one heart meeting another. It continues outward, rippling through all existence. Every connection, every act of love expands the circle of our being. He wrote, "We are not many selves. We are one song sung differently." In that single truth lies the quiet essence of unity, that each of us is a unique note in the same eternal melody. From learning to belong, we understood love as the art of dissolving the walls of the self, a way of remembering that we are part of something larger. Now, in the circle expands, Hesse invites us to hear the music beneath that realization. The melody of humanity is vast, composed of joy and grief, beginnings and endings. Yet every life, no matter how small or brief, adds its tone to the harmony. It is easy, in the solitude of modern life, to feel like a separate being, to mistake isolation for individuality. But Hesse saw this as a passing illusion. Beneath the noise of everyday existence, a deeper rhythm connects us all. He believed that loneliness is not proof of separation, but a gentle reminder that we have forgotten our shared song. We do not need to create unity. We only need to remember it. Every act of compassion, every word spoken with kindness, every moment of true understanding adds another thread to the invisible web between souls. It is the same web that binds the stars to the sea, the breath to the wind, and the human heart to everything that has ever lived. In Hesse's vision, to exist is to participate in the great symphony of being, even in silence, even in pain. He once wrote that the world is not divided into good and evil, light and dark. It is a single body, forever transforming. Just as a song needs both melody and pause, life needs both joy and sorrow to remain whole. We may think of ourselves as isolated notes, but the universe listens to the song as one. Imagine, for a moment, how this truth unfolds in your own life. The laughter of a child, the quiet words of an old friend, the sound of rain on a window, all of it becomes part of you. You carry them without knowing, and in turn, your smallest gestures, a smile to a stranger, a moment of patience, an act of forgiveness, travel farther than you will ever see. The circle expands because of you. Hesse's world is one of reflection, but also of resonance. To resonate is to vibrate in harmony with something else. It is to recognize that your inner life, your fears, your hopes, your longing are not yours alone. They belong to the collective heartbeat of humanity. The pain you feel tonight has been felt before, countless times. The joy that lights your chest has also warmed countless souls. You are not a solitary spark in the dark. You are part of the great fire that never goes out. He believed that to realize this is to awaken. Awakening for Hesse is not an escape from individuality, but a deepening of it. You do not vanish into the whole. You learn to sing in tune with it. Just as every voice in a choir holds its note while blending into something larger. Every person contributes to the evolving harmony of existence. The more aware we become of this shared song, the more peaceful our lives grow. In Siddhartha, this awareness comes at the end of the journey. When the river teaches the final lesson, Siddhartha hears all voices of joy and sorrow, birth and death, merging into one continuous sound. It is not chaotic, it is complete. The river does not silence difference, it gathers it. Hesse captures this moment as a revelation that the beauty of life lies not in perfection, but in coexistence. Each voice matters, not because it stands apart, but because it joins the chorus. To live in this understanding is to move through the world with gentle eyes. You begin to see yourself everywhere, in strangers, in nature, even in silence. You begin to sense that no encounter is random, no moment truly separate. Everything you touch leaves a ripple. Everything that touches you becomes part of your rhythm. This is the spiritual ecology Hesse envisioned, an ever-expanding circle of consciousness, fed by empathy and awareness. But he also warned that forgetting this truth is the root of suffering. The more we cling to our small identities, the more we lose sight of the greater harmony. The ego divides what was never divided. It creates borders in a boundless sky. Yet, even this forgetting serves a purpose. It gives us the chance to rediscover connection through love, through art, through forgiveness. In rediscovering, the circle grows larger than before. Hesse's imagery often returns to sound, the song of life, the music of the soul. He saw existence as vibration, always moving, always resonating. To him, silence was not absence, but potential, the pause that allows the next note to be born. You are part of that rhythm, even when you feel still. Every breath you take hums softly within the cosmic choir. In the end, you are not alone. You are the echo of everyone who ever loved. That line holds the essence of Hesse's compassion. You are not simply the sum of your experiences. You are also the memory of all tenderness that has ever existed. Every act of love, given or received, lives on in you. The mother's lullaby, the friend's laughter, the lover's whisper, the stranger's kindness, all continue, echoing through time, through you. In this sense, death does not break the circle, it widens it. The voices of those who are gone do not vanish. They merge with the music that carries us forward. Their love becomes the breath behind ours. The circle expands endlessly, never ending, never closing. Perhaps that is why Hesse's writing feels both melancholic and comforting. He never denied the ache of human life. He knew loneliness, loss, disillusionment, but he also knew that beneath all of it, there is a current of unity that nothing can destroy. To remember this, even for a moment, is to be healed. He once said that life is waiting for us to recognize ourselves within it. The recognition is simple. We were never meant to stand apart. Every being is a thread, every life a vibration. Together, we weave the eternal fabric of existence, shimmering, imperfect, alive. So tonight, as your breath slows and the world grows quiet, imagine this circle expanding through every face you've loved, every memory you've held, every life that ever touched yours. Feel the soft pulse of connection stretching across time, across distance, through every heart still beating under the same sky. Let this awareness comfort you. Let it remind you that you have never been separate, never been forgotten. You are not a note lost in the song. You are the song itself, sung in your own tone, carried by the breath of all who came before. And as Hesse's voice whispers through the silence of your mind, remember, we are not many selves. We are one song sung differently. You are part of that song. And somewhere, in the quiet between heartbeats, the whole universe is singing with you. Night hums softly, and the song we've been following, the song of the self, of love, of belonging, begins to quiet. The echoes fade into something gentler, something almost sacred from the vast circle of connection we have just witnessed. Hermann Hesse leads us to a final truth, not of ending, but of resting. Every journey, every transformation, every breath eventually finds a moment of stillness, not as death, but as pause. As he once wrote, becoming never stops, it only rests. The path of the soul, for Hesse, is not a straight line but a rhythm. Expansion and return, creation and dissolution, awakening and repose. Each phase of becoming gives way to another, but between them lies rest, the sacred silence that renews all movement. We often mistake the stillness for an ending, yet in his philosophy, nothing truly ends. Even the stars, which seem eternal, must one day cool and dim. But that too is only transformation, not disappearance. Their light continues, traveling endlessly across time. Their energy returns to the universe as warmth, as dust, as new beginnings. This is what Hesse meant by rest. To rest is to surrender to the natural rhythm of life, to recognize that stillness is not the absence of being, but its deepest expression. It is the breath between songs, the quiet between waves. It is the soul's way of preparing for the next unfolding. From the circle expands, we learn that we are part of one great song sung differently through every life. But even the most beautiful song must soften at some point, not to end, but to let the melody breathe. The same is true of the human spirit. It cannot sustain constant movement. To live, to love, to learn, all of it requires intervals of silence. Hesse saw rest not as retreat, but as harmony. Even stars sleep, he reminded us, and so should we. In Siddhartha, this truth emerges through the river, that eternal symbol of life's flow. The river never ceases, but it also never hurries. It pauses in still pools, swells in flood, narrows through stone, and widens again into calm. Each state is part of the same existence. In those moments when it seems still, it is simply gathering itself. The same applies to the human heart. We need our quiet pools, the nights when we say nothing, do nothing, and allow life to carry us instead of fighting the current. Modern life, however, fears stillness. We are taught to keep moving, to keep achieving, to keep becoming something new. But Hesse's wisdom whispers the opposite. Becoming is not about endless striving. It is about rhythm, about knowing when to let go. To rest is not failure. It is the proof that you have lived deeply enough to need renewal. He understood that transformation is cyclical. No one can be in constant bloom. Even the most radiant flower closes at night. The soul, too, must retreat inward, digest its experiences, and allow meaning to ripen quietly beneath the surface. In that darkness, unseen growth happens, as Hesse wrote elsewhere. Within us is everything. That includes the strength to pause. Think of how nature mirrors this truth. The tides recede before returning. The moon disappears before shining again. The heart breaks so it can open wider. Life itself breathes in and out, forward and back, endlessly becoming, endlessly resting. Hesse's insight is that peace does not come from escaping this cycle, but from trusting it. Perhaps that is why his stories, though filled with struggle, always end in quiet, not triumph, not resolution, just quiet. The kind that feels like an exhale after a long journey, like sitting beside a river, listening to its soft, unending flow. His characters never reach a permanent peace because there is no such thing. They simply learn to rest inside the motion, to accept that they are both the wave and the stillness beneath it. In this sense, rest is a spiritual act. It is the soul's way of returning home after the long work of becoming. You rest not because everything is complete, but because everything is alive within you. All the versions of yourself that ever were. all the loves that shaped you, all the echoes that taught you how to listen. Rest is the integration of your journey. Becoming never stops. It only rests. The line carries both humility and grace. It suggests that growth is infinite, that even as you sleep, something within you continues to unfold. The heart does not stop beating. The universe does not stop breathing. Even in stillness, life moves. And that movement, slow, silent, invisible, is sacred. So perhaps rest is not an interruption of life, but its deepest form. To lie in bed at night, to close your eyes, to feel your body sink into the quiet. These are not escapes from the world. They are the world itself, expressed through you. Each inhale gathers the day. Each exhale returns it to the earth. Rest is communion. Hesse's philosophy is filled with this gentle paradox, that we move forward by letting go. That stillness is not stagnation, but renewal. His characters, from Demian to Siddhartha to Steppenwolf, all face the same lesson. You cannot become more until you learn to rest within what already is. There is comfort in this. It means that you do not have to force your evolution. You do not need to demand clarity or purpose every moment. You can stop, breathe, and trust that even silence is progress. The soul does not need constant noise to grow. It needs space to listen. In the soft rhythm of rest, life continues its quiet work. The mind unwinds. The body repairs. The spirit remembers its connection to all things. The boundaries between self and universe blur again, until you realize there was never separation to begin with. The pulse that moves through you is the same that hums in the stars. And just as they rest in the darkness, so too can you. It is no accident that Hesse's imagery often ends in sleep, not as a metaphor for death, but as an invitation to peace. Sleep, for him, was the ultimate act of surrender, the nightly rehearsal of trust. To fall asleep is to admit that the world can turn without your control. It is to recognize that existence holds you, even in unconsciousness. It is to rest in the flow of becoming. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy, remember his words. Becoming never stops. It only rests. Let that truth loosen the last tensions in your body. Let it remind you that everything you've done, everything you felt, has been enough for now. The universe does not rush, and neither should you. Even the stars sleep, and in their rest, the light of tomorrow is quietly forming. Night has grown still. The rhythm of becoming has slowed into something vast and quiet, a silence not of absence, but of presence. From nothing ends, it only rests. We learn that even stillness is alive, that every pause carries the pulse of something eternal. Now, Hermann Hesse leads us deeper into the realization that this eternal rhythm does not live somewhere beyond us, but within us. He wrote simply, "Within us is everything." That sentence, like a whisper from the soul itself, carries an entire universe inside it. Hesse did not mean it as metaphor, but as revelation. Everything we seek, meaning, peace, light, already exists in the inner landscape of the human spirit. The outer world, with its stars and storms, its joys and sorrows, is only a mirror of that infinite interior. To know yourself, he believed, is to rediscover the universe looking back through your own eyes. From the earliest pages of his writing, Hesse saw the human being not as a fragment of existence, but as its reflection, the microcosm of the whole. You are not in the world. He might have said, the world is in you. Every sound, every star, every movement of life finds its echo inside your consciousness. To look inward, then, is not to withdraw from reality. It is to enter it more completely. Think of the stars above you. Each one burns billions of miles away, and yet their light touches your eyes this very moment. The atoms that make up your body, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, were born in the heart of such stars. You are not separate from the cosmos. You are its continuation. The same fire that lights the galaxies flickers quietly in your breath. Hesse's philosophy turns this cosmic truth into spiritual awakening. The outer world becomes a teacher, a reflection, an extension of our inner state. He believed that what we see out there depends on how we see in here. A peaceful mind perceives harmony. A restless mind projects chaos. The journey to understand life is therefore the same as the journey to understand oneself. There is no boundary between the two. In Siddhartha, this insight appears at the river's edge. The river, once an object of study, becomes a voice, speaking, singing, teaching. It says nothing new, yet it reveals everything. Siddhartha realizes that the flow of the river is the same as the flow within him, the current of desire, the pull of time, the rhythm of becoming. In that recognition, the division between inner and outer collapses. He listens and finds the universe speaking in his own heartbeat. This is the essence of Hesse's teaching, that the divine, the eternal, the infinite are not somewhere else. They reside in the folds of consciousness, in the spaces between thoughts, in the stillness behind emotion. Within us is everything. That means every joy you have ever known, every love you have ever felt, every truth you have ever glimpsed, all remain woven into the quiet architecture of your soul. You do not need to travel to the ends of the earth to find the sacred. You only need to listen inwardly, where eternity hums in the silence beneath your breath. Modern life teaches the opposite. It tells us to search for meaning, for fulfillment, for a place to belong. We chase these things as if they lie beyond our reach. But Hesse's wisdom suggests something simpler, that the act of seeking often hides what is already here. The moment you stop chasing the light, you notice it was never gone. Like the sun hidden behind clouds, your own inner radiance never truly disappears. It only waits for you to become still enough to see it. He once wrote, "You are only afraid if you are not in harmony with yourself." That fear, the sense of being lost, incomplete, unworthy, arises when we forget the universe within. We begin to believe that we are separate from life, that existence is something happening to us instead of through us. But the moment we remember that we are part of everything, that life moves through us as naturally as the wind through trees, fear softens into wonder. There is a kind of peace that comes from this awareness. It is not a peace of escape or control, but of alignment, of resting in the rhythm of what already is. When you breathe deeply and listen, you begin to sense that everything you experience, joy, pain, longing, belongs to a single flow. The stars, the rivers, the people you love, all are made of the same quiet substance, and you, too, are part of that. This idea is not only spiritual, but deeply human. To know that within us is everything means accepting the wholeness of our being, both the light and the shadow. It means embracing contradiction, imperfection, and change. The mind, like the universe, holds galaxies of thought and emotion. To reject any part of yourself is to dim a star in that sky. Hesse invites us instead to accept all of it, the fear, the doubt, the longing, as necessary elements of the greater design. Only through such acceptance do we return to our fullness. You might imagine this as standing in a vast cathedral of silence within yourself. Each thought is a flicker of light on the wall, each emotion a note in the distant choir. None of it needs to be silenced or controlled. It only needs to be seen and allowed to echo freely. In that seeing, something beautiful happens. The self expands beyond its boundaries. You begin to sense that you are not a single person living a single life. You are life itself, momentarily aware of its own reflection. Hesse's writings always return to this realization that awakening is not the discovery of something new, but the remembrance of what has always been true. In Demian, he wrote that the way to self is the way to God. That is not a call to religion, but to presence, to seeing that the divine is not outside, but within. Every act of awareness, every moment of love, every breath of compassion is the universe expressing itself through you. And perhaps that is what rest truly means, not the absence of motion, but the full presence of being. When you are still enough to feel the universe breathing within you, you realize there is nothing left to chase. The journey has always been homecoming. The seeker and the sought were never two. Let this understanding sink into you like light through water. Feel how it softens the edges of your worries, how it expands the quiet inside your chest. There is no need to prove anything, to solve anything, to become anything. You already contain the vastness you long for. The stars above you are not watching. They are remembering themselves through you. You are not in the world. The world is in you. Every breath, every thought, every dream carries the pulse of the infinite. So tonight, let your breath slow. Let the boundaries dissolve. Feel the stillness of galaxies unfolding behind your ribs. Feel the earth rise and fall in rhythm with your chest. Hesse's whisper lingers in the dark. Within us is everything. And in that truth, the universe finally comes home, not outside, but quietly, peacefully, inside you. The breath of the world has slowed. From the vast truth that within us is everything, there follows only silence, a silence not empty, but whole. It feels as though the long journey of the soul has circled back to its beginning, to that first stillness before thought, before desire, before the question, who am I? Even the search has grown quiet now. There is nothing left to reach for, nothing left to become. What remains is peace, the kind Hesse spoke of when he wrote, "Peace comes when we stop asking life to stay." In that single line, he gives us his final offering, surrender. The acceptance that all things, joy, sorrow, love, loss, flow through us, never staying, never meant to. The peace we seek is not found in holding on, but in letting go of our need to hold. The river of existence does not stop for our hands, but when we release them, we discover that we were never separate from its current. We were always part of its flow. Hesse's philosophy ends not with resolution, but with harmony. throughout his life. His writing was filled with restlessness, the search for unity between body and spirit, mind and soul, man and nature. Yet in his final tone, there is no urgency, no striving. There is only stillness, a gentle recognition that life itself has been the teacher all along. The journey of becoming ends not in perfection, but in reconciliation. The self at peace with the self, the universe resting within itself. From the universe within you, we learn that everything, light, breath, thought, love, is already inside us. Now, in this last step, that knowledge deepens into experience. To truly rest, we must allow ourselves to dissolve into that wholeness, to sleep, not as an escape, but as a return to the rhythm of everything. Hesse's vision of rest is not passive. It is the most profound act of trust. To stop asking life to stay is to acknowledge that it was never ours to control. We are waves upon an infinite ocean, rising, falling, returning. Our brief existence is a shimmer on a surface of eternity. But even as we fade, we do not vanish. We return to the depth that gave us birth. To sleep, then, is not to disappear. It is to be gathered back into the great stillness from which we came. Imagine this: the stars above you slowly dim, not because their light has ended, but because they too are resting. Even the cosmos breathes, expanding, contracting, pulsing through cycles of birth and decay. Every atom, every planet, every consciousness participates in this rhythm of surrender. In Hesse's world, sleep is the soul's echo of the universe's own rest. The moment it folds itself inward, content to simply be. He would have said that peace is not something we must earn, but something that arrives the moment we stop resisting. The more we fight to hold on to meaning, to success, to identity, the farther we drift from the quiet truth at the heart of existence. Hesse knew this intimately. His characters wrestled with longing, loneliness, the need to understand. But their redemption always came in stillness, in the soft acceptance that not every question needs an answer, and not every truth needs to be named. In Siddhartha, this final rest comes at the river once more. The river, eternal and unjudging, reflects the face of the world. Siddhartha looks into its surface and sees not himself, but everything: joy, pain, beginnings, endings, all woven into one pattern. He smiles, not because he understands, but because he no longer needs to. His peace lies in knowing that understanding is no longer required. The river flows. He flows with it. That is enough. So too, Hesse leaves us with this same peace. Life is no longer a puzzle to be solved, but a song to be heard as it fades into silence. To sleep is to listen to that fading, to feel it carry you beyond thought. The world does not disappear, it becomes you. The separation between self and life, between waking and dreaming, dissolves. You are not a body lying beneath the stars. You are the stars, quietly returning to their own light. There is deep tenderness in this ending. Sleep now, Hesse seems to whisper, not as someone seeking meaning, but as the universe resting within itself. To sleep this way is to forgive everything: your failures, your doubts, even your endless search for peace. It is to recognize that you were never outside of life, only ever inside its breathing. It is to feel that all you have ever loved still lives, softly, within you. Think of what that means: to rest as the universe rests, Your breath, rising and falling, mirrors the rhythm of galaxies expanding and collapsing. Your heartbeat echoes the pulse of creation itself. Every dream you dream tonight will be written in the same language as the stars. To sleep consciously, to let yourself dissolve gently into the fabric of existence, is to participate in the oldest ritual there is, the surrender of being back into being. And perhaps that is the meaning Hesse always sought, not in words or systems, but in this simple awareness. To be alive is to be the universe experiencing itself. To rest is to let that experience fold back into silence, to let life continue without needing to hold it still. Nothing is lost. Nothing ever was. The light does not die when the candle burns out. It merely changes form. This is the quiet faith of Hermann Hesse, not the faith of doctrine or belief, but of surrender. To rest in the flow of existence is to finally understand that everything is complete. Even in imperfection, you do not need to fix the world or yourself. You only need to allow both to be. So as this journey draws to a close, let the search itself rest. Let every question fall away. Let the mind soften, the breath deepen, the body melt into the dark like snow dissolving into water. You have nothing left to prove. You have already arrived. Hesse's final whisper lingers like wind across water. Sleep now, not as someone seeking meaning, but as the universe resting within itself. And in that stillness, the stars rest too. The river hums quietly beneath your dreams. Life continues endlessly, effortlessly within you. So let go. Let your thoughts drift. Let peace unfold, soft as night. Sleep now as the universe sleeps within itself. In the end, everything quiets. The noise of becoming, the pain of division, the long search for truth, all fade into a single breath. You have walked through shadow and light, through doubt and tenderness, through the breaking and the healing. And now, there was no need to reach anymore. Hesse once said, becoming never stops. It only rests. Perhaps peace is not something we find, but something that happens when we stop trying so hard to hold ourselves together. All that you are, the mistakes, the longing, the love has led you here to this stillness. Nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be different. You are simply here, breathing, whole in your imperfection. Let the day fall away. Let your thoughts loosen their grip. There is nothing left to prove, nothing left to seek. Only rest, gentle, honest, and complete. Sleep now, not as someone searching for meaning, but as yourself, finally at peace. Good night.